I was hoping that would have been part of the video, but oh
Oh,
well.
it can be. Welcome
Yeah, because
everybody.
everyone else is going to be wondering, so I got to explain it to them.
Okay, we'll get. I want to make sure that we're live because sometimes there's a delay. But if we are live, welcome to the Arete Podcast. Today's a little bit different, but actually, I've been inspired to do this more often and kind of create a subset of episodes, like I've been trying to do with my religion episodes. Although I've not been getting too many bites on that for some reason. There it is. Finally, there's the notification. Episodes. But I want to start doing some of these debates too, because across all the podcasts that I am on or am a part of, I have a sort of credo in that if anybody ever offers and wants to come on and debate, happily accept. There were only two rules. The first rule is you got to share it on social media, and well, I guess there's three rules. You got to share it. No crybaby bullshit. If you end up embarrassing, or not you, but the broad,
Yeah.
the royal you, no crybaby bullshit. And once it devolves to name calling, that just means you lose.
Yeah. Essentially, yes. One, and you kind of already expanded on it, but people need to debate within good faith. Like I know it's kind of the crybaby argument a little bit too, but
It's not though, because the whole point. I don't even like to call it debate because debate has an inherent sort of like competition to it. And it's because of our political system. It's like you have to win a debate. And it's like, yeah, I prefer I prefer treatises where
yeah,
like anyone who's familiar with the Protestant Reformation knows about not treatises. No, hang on. Treatises? Now I sound like an idiot. Whatever Martin Luther nailed to the door. I think they were treatises. 95
I
theses.
think that's what it is,
Yeah,
if I recall
95,
correctly.
95 theses. So, for those of you who may not know exactly what that is, that was very common at the time. It's basically when someone says, I kind of think I got this figured out, but now I want to test it. And there's always a good faith element to this. So what you would do, you would often put it somewhere public. It was quite common to do this on the doors of the church, which is why in some of the paintings you see of Luther nailing his thesis to the door, there's other stuff on the door. It's not just there are some paintings that show just his 95, but there are others that show multiple things. And it's basically an invitation to be like, hey, let's meet at this place and this time and let's discuss, poke holes in my argument, that kind of stuff. And
Yeah.
you've been trying to get me to debate some of these things for at least a year. So here
Yeah,
we
well,
are.
every time we end up debating, it ends up being that we agree mostly than we disagree. But, you might not like someone's presentation and or we just have to clarify things and then we're like, "Oh, well then yeah, we agree. Yeah,
Well,
yeah."
that's what happens when you debate in good faith. Is it's like, oh,
Yeah.
well, maybe I didn't understand his argument, or maybe I misinterpreted what he or she meant by that. So, you mentioned though, because the first thing before we went live, I said, "Oh my God, what happened to your face, buddy?"
Yeah. Just for everyone else, they're going to be wondering like why I look so messed up. I had some thug throw a shot glass at my face, and thank heavens it was at work for my security job. So it being under workers' comp, I'm going to get plastic surgery, get my teeth fixed, all that stuff. So yeah, just for everyone else, I didn't. I've been kind of embarrassed to do any videos, but I decided I'd come on here. You know what? Everyone already kind of knows me. They know what I do. Like this shouldn't be no surprise to anybody.
I was gonna say you are the brick wall. It's not. I was only surprised by the cuts. Like they look relatively fresh. So
They are. They are.
yeah.
They're less than a month old. But that being said, though, I took the shot glass to the face and I just didn't even do anything. Like literally, just like held the towel to my face the whole time until the cops and the paramedics got there. But
Now,
yeah.
what's crazy is if he threw a shot glass at you, it had to have been pretty hard because, I mean,
Oh yeah.
that's small compact glass, and for that to break, that's
Mhm.
a lot of force. That's crazy.
Oh, he threw it like a baseball pitcher.
Oof.
He's a big dude too.
Yeah.
Your
So,
classic, 6'1", 250 pound probably type, but yeah.
it was,
Uh, but I'm just glad to be having workers comp cover it because I've been shafted by security companies before that just tried to ghost me after I got hurt. Like you got some real despicable people out there, but I'm getting taken care of in this one and getting a little bit of a work break. So
well, that's good. But I figured we'd start off into our first topic that we wanted to discuss by asking you a question.
yeah,
Have you seen season 27 premiere of South Park yet?
I haven't, bro. I heard
Oh,
it was
dude.
cringe.
It's not cringe, it's hilarious.
Is it? Okay.
It's
I
so
all I
funny.
heard was from, the MAGA brethren. Oh my God, this is not that bad.
No, here's what I mean, don't get me wrong. It takes a bite out of Donald Trump. But what a lot of people don't realize, and I'm sure the MAGA club is part of this, that episode is much more of a finger to Paramount than to Trump.
Yes,
And don't
I did
yeah.
hear about that, and I heard they did take some swings at the left too for different things. So, yeah,
Yeah, but I mean, I'm not gonna sugarcoat it. I mean, they really go for Donald Trump, but I loved it because it's very much a return to form to South Park. Because I'm just gonna say it. I'm part of the club that theorizes that the Donald Trump in that episode is just Saddam Hussein in disguise.
yeah. There are some people who thought about that, and some people are thinking that they're doing that intentionally. They're being so bold with it
Oh yeah,
to, to kind of give a middle finger to, Paramount.
they are. They
Uh,
for sure are. Well, that's the joke. There's literally a point in that episode where Jesus comes down to town. And he's like, "Okay, you guys, you need to
yeah.
shut up. Just do what they
Oh,
say, or we might get canceled."
there is a very popular growing trend, though, that many men, especially women too, but many men are starting to turn back to religion and going to church again and
This
all
is
that
true.
stuff. People are starting to see the light, taking the red pill, so to speak, and that's the right way to go about it.
I for different reasons, I'm one of them for very different reasons, but it's
Me
not
too.
so
Like,
much. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
I was just saying, like, I put in my retirement video, like, I was going to start turning more towards Christianity myself. And I've been going to, the meetings and everything and trying to tell more people about it, get more people to join. It's an interesting thing, man, because when I was raised real religiously
So was I.
and
Yeah.
I turned away from it to go fight and do this, all the other stuff, be stupid. And I paid the price for it. And that being said, when I do learn, I learn well. But it's when you go out there and learn the hard way, and then you go back and read the Bible again, and you get to see with your new eyes, you've actually see that the Bible has had the solution for your life the entire time. It literally has the meaning of life within it. And people they wonder, they're like, oh, what are we supposed to do here? What's the purpose of all that? It's in there. And it actually makes sense, but it took me a while to actually get around to that.
Yeah, it is very interesting. It's a common trajectory, especially when people like you and I, for whatever reason, you grow up in a religious household and then you fall out of it for whatever your reason may be. And then everybody, like everybody who's an atheist in their 20s is an obnoxious asshole. Like, because we all want to be right, man. Like, we all want to be
Yep.
right. And then
Yep.
what kind of did it for me is my fiance is much more religious than I am, but I think I'm more of a I take that back. She's not more religious than I am, but I think she's much more of a typical type of religious, if that makes sense. Like she very much believes in God and trusts in him, and but I'm more of the like academically religious, if that makes
Yeah.
sense. I like
Nah, I get,
studying this stuff. I like
mhm.
trying to figure it out and asking questions that make a lot of people uncomfortable. The difference between me now and me then is no, now I'm trying to understand it. Before I was trying to disprove it.
Mhm.
And now I'm
Yeah.
trying to understand it. So I am very frustrating though, because and this has been true my whole life. The only thing I cannot stand is bad arguments, even if they're from
Yeah.
my side. I'm like,
Mhm.
no, that's just a bad argument. Like you have to do better than that because that doesn't stand up to
Absolutely.
scrutiny, right?
Yeah,
So
and if you come with bad arguments from the religious side, you're only going to dissuade people from joining it in the first place. So you have
yeah,
to be on your P's and Q's.
Yeah, and I wouldn't even go so far as to say right now, like I wouldn't even consider myself full. I think I'm far too doubting to be considered like a full or Christian at the moment. But through circumstances that I won't get into, not there's nothing bad, it's just a long story that's not very interesting. Is I kind of came to the conclusion like, well, if I'm trying to figure this out, what better place to do it?
Hmm.
Like, as I've tried figuring it out from the outside, and it's not.
Yeah.
There's still questions. At least
Yeah.
here, I can. It's not like a subterfuge thing, right? I figured that hey, I tried it out here. Might as well try it in here, and it makes my soon-to-be wife happy. So there's
Well,
literally no bad.
I don't know if she's ever shared that scripture with you. I don't remember exactly what it is, but Jehovah literally instructs wives who are married to unbelievers, quote unquote. And you're not really an unbeliever, just not as strong as her by your own admission. But that through the good conduct of their wives, they will be won over to God. So
I
she's
know
gonna
what
win
you're
you
talking
over.
about. I
Yeah,
can't remember the exact chapter and verse,
yeah,
but
like
there's
Timothy or
yeah, there's a practice in not every sect of Judaism, but there's a similar sort of not belief but behavior. There's a lot of I learned that Ben Shapiro talks about this with particularly religious Jews is women in Judaism often have a goal of marrying a man that's more religious than them because
yes,
it will direct them to be more involved religiously.
yep,
So that's
yep.
usually high on the list of criteria for religious Jewish people that want to, sort of step it up a notch. It's very
Yeah,
common.
and I found out the hard way. You have to have those morals built within you, or if you try to have a marriage like I recently did, try to have a marriage who isn't as morally grounded in religion, then it's going to fall apart because the whole world teaches you to just be about you, to be about you, be about you. But that's actually Jordan Peterson does awesome research on this, where they've done the brain waves and the signals to where it's associated with stress whenever you think about yourself. But the Bible says that there is more happiness in giving than in receiving. The whole point in life, literally the reason that God created us to begin with was just because he didn't want to be alone, but not that he can't be alone within himself. He can have satisfactory, but he wanted just because because he wanted to, just because he wanted to see someone else enjoy life, not that he needed it, but he created other people so that you could, and so that he could see other people having a good life just like him. And that's literally the whole purpose of our lives too, is to create others. The same thing. We're made in God's image, and we're built with the same design, the same purpose.
Yeah. It's funny you say it that way because just yesterday, I was watching a YouTube video of he's a Christian filmmaker, but his YouTube channel cuts up like overly Christian movie, not all of them, but just poorly made ones, the ones that are sermons and not movies. And he said, I'm paraphrasing, but he said something to the effect of, "Is like, we were made, if you agree with Christian doctrine, we were made by a creator. So
Mm-hmm.
why would we then not want to be creative beings? It's what we are. Human
Yeah.
beings are creative beings. We have a drive like no other life form on this planet. We have a drive to create things for the sake of creation. Explain art
Yeah.
any other way.
Mm-hmm.
We just have an
I
innate, yeah.
Yeah, I actually had an interesting epiphany. I've been having a lot of these lately, but I had always wondered, God, if you wanted us to only be with one wife forever and ever, why in the world did you create us with these male raging ambitions? Like, why would you do that to us? It's absolute torture.
Okay,
I
let's
figured it
start.
out though.
Oh, okay. Because I was gonna say I actually have. It's not the answer, but I have an answer. But let's see. Let's see.
But I figured it out. The reason that is because in the olden days, men could have multiple wives. We needed to populate the earth, but then God saw that the earth was being more than populated enough, and He also that's an interesting thought within itself too. Is that God actually makes adjustments because He gives us free will. He has a certain way He plans on doing things, but because He gives us free will, He doesn't automatically determine the future, and He makes adjustments based on it. We used to be able to have multiple wives. Now we don't. He adjusted that line of thinking because He knows something that a lot of people have been figuring out today, even with the political spectrum, that you will get the best results if you have one family, one husband, one wife, and you all focus on raising those kids. That's the best outcomes by far. It's not even close through that system. Yeah, through that system. So he adjusts his way of doing things based on how he sees things. But we used to, have multiple wives and populate the earth. But because he knows human nature, it's very possible that there might be some sort of extinction level event to where we might have to repopulate the earth again. So he lets us still have that drive, that ambition, because if it was up to women, they don't have the drive like we do. We would go extinct. But it is our test at the same time to make sure that we can do that if the earth ever decided that we needed to, if there was some mass extinction event and we needed to do that. But because we value and prioritize our family and their benefits, that is our test to God. One of them.
I will segue, because this would have been my response, and it ties into that. There's a number of thinkers that would make the case, and again, I'm paraphrasing, that what separates humans from animals is our ability of reason and control of those primal urges. Like, for example, like what you said, we have the ability to, human males have the ability to impregnate more than one woman. I mean, theoretically, is your only limit is your stamina, right? There's endless possibility of impregnating multiple women if you're a human male. However, we have the ability to reason and control. And it's just like you said, it's somewhat dependent on circumstances and culture. In some cultures, that would be considered a virtue to just have that size of, but in the Judeo-Christian sort of tradition, especially in the modern day, we prioritize the family versus the primal sort of desire to, go forth and spread our seed. And the interesting part, though, is that statistically, that urge is stronger, obviously post puberty, but like that urge is strongest when a man is younger.
Yeah. Oh,
and it
like I laugh at girls who think that I have girls tell me, "Oh no, girls are just as bad as boys." I'm like, no, y'all are not. You don't have a clue as to the depths of our horniness and drive. You're like,
well,
y'all.
how could you know? You have no basis for
Well, I
comparison.
think they know, but they don't know. Like if
Yeah.
you do it just based on the science of adrenaline and testosterone, and they've done the studies on this, that women think about sex about 4 times every 10 minutes. Men think about and they think about food 6 times every 10 minutes. Men think about sex 9 to 10 times every 10 minutes. So women care more about food than they do sex, and men think about sex twice as much as men think about as women think about food. Like, so I just laugh because they have no idea our depravity, how bad we want. They don't have a clue.
I feel like that's true, because the joke is that women get crabby when they're hungry, and men invented blue balls.
Yep. It's so true. But like, and I never realized how true that stereotype is. Oh, your girl's being grumpy? Feed her something.
Hey, listen. Here's the thing. Now, some of you might find that offensive. Go on social media. The joke is made by women all over the world.
Yes, it's so true, man. Like a lot of the time.
It's a joke in my relationship. It's just demonstrably true.
It's one thing that I had realized better in my last relationship, because like I would always get butthurt. I'm like, why are you starting a fight? And I'm like, okay, and then
some chicken nuggets, like,
yeah, essentially, yeah. But that being said, though, all right, I don't know if you have an ad read or anything, but I'm going to make an announcement too, because I forgot. This is definitely something we should announce. It was on my YouTube, but there was a bill that got passed by the House and Senate in Texas to ban THC products, to ban hemp products.
I heard about that.
All that stuff. And Governor Greg Abbott vetoed it. He just let it expire technically, but he vetoed it essentially, bro. He could have signed at any point in time. He let it go.
That's got to be tax revenue. It's got to be.
Oh yeah, and also just for the business, that I mean, it's
That's what I mean.
booming
That's
everywhere, but also
that's got to be revenue.
yeah.
I'm still flabbergasted that there are still states, my state, we still haven't legalized recreational marijuana,
Yeah,
recreational
well,
cannabis.
I don't think Texas will ever be one of those states. I think they're too red for that. But
Oh,
them
you said C.
compromising on the hemp products,
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know.
I'm sorry. Yeah, you're right. I don't know why I thought it was legal in Texas, but they
But
were
man, I'm telling
trying.
you,
Yeah, they were
yeah,
trying to
they're
crack
still
down on
trying, bro. Like
CBD.
they're
Yeah.
actually trying to redo the bill now, so it only bans like certain THC products, and like, but they're still coming after Delta 9 and Delta 8 and everything like that too. So, but I'm so glad to see the right actually trending towards this freedom because, like we've said so many times before, it is not up to you to ban things. It's up to you to teach the people responsibility to use the products correctly.
Well, funnily enough, because I was going to segue into Trump to be our first debate point, but my prediction, and I think it's coming true even faster thanks to the Epstein list. I think that's a catalyst. I think the Republican Party and the greater right politically in general in the United States is about to split. I think it's going to split.
Okay. All right. Well, that being said, in celebration of Governor Greg Abbott for making a wonderful thing, because my tolerance is way too high, I'm taking two, and I'm going to, and it'll be done by the time our stream is over. It'll start kicking in. So, man, I'm telling you, I'm so addicted to these, man. My tolerance is way too high on this stuff. I can't believe what an addict I've become. I can't control it. Don't get me wrong, but man, I'm so hooked on these things.
It's whatever, and that's a stance that I have that perplexes most people when they first hear it. Is I am pro full legalization of recreational THC products, and I never have partaken, and I probably never will. It's just not my thing. But I'm not about to tell grown adults what they can't do, especially with something as benign as cannabis.
Bro, I thought you did. I know. Um, I know Eric definitely does. I
Oh,
thought you did the
Eric.
stuff too.
No, I've used a couple of CBD only, like CBD melatonin gummies in the past, but I haven't used any of the THC products.
Oh well, that melatonin stuff works real good too. I
And
need it for my sleep.
oh, dude, the CBD melatonin combo is perfect because the melatonin puts you to sleep and the CBD keeps you asleep.
Yep.
It's wild because sometimes when I take melatonin, I still wake up and I'm like it's as though I didn't. It's like I didn't stay in a deep sleep. So like yeah, I
Yeah.
slept, but it wasn't. It was no raving hell. But that
Yeah.
melatonin CBD combo, oh,
Yeah. The problem is though, and I believe the scientific research when it comes to this, there's a lot of stuff out there that I think is over exaggerated and fear mongering, like they've always
oh
done with
for
weed
sure.
and stuff.
Well,
But one thing
the
that I
whole
definitely think is true.
yeah.
What?
I was gonna say the whole war on cannabis
Yeah.
well hemp more so because cannabis was a byproduct that I'm sorry, I'm gonna reword that. Cannabis was the culprit that the timber industry used to discredit the entire hemp family because hemp was gonna be stiff competition for timber very quickly for multiple reasons. It's just a better product. You can
Yeah.
make anything with it and you can harvest it 4 to 6 times a year.
Yep.
Like
And it was kept down by all the paper industries and everything. So
yep, so they
yeah.
took a
I mean, I
cousin.
can't. I know we have cancer. I know we have the cure. In fact, in my opinion, I'm quite sure that the government knows how to give people cancer. Like, what's his
I
name?
don't
Loza Alexander, the guy who did the "Let's Go Brandon" song. He all of a sudden got cancer. Like, that I don't believe that stuff is a coincidence at all.
know. There's it's that's one of the I don't know enough about it to say definitively I believe it or not, but it's one of those things where if it came out, I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah. But going back to the subject on Trump, I actually disagree with you. I don't think it's going to split his base at all. What I honestly
No, no,
believe is
not his base, the
okay.
right. Yeah, because that's I think that's where you're seeing part of his base is anti him right now because of the Epstein list. But what I think you're really, which here's the ironic part. Well, I'm going to reword that. So there were a lot of people that were very supportive of Donald Trump that I would say these are the people that were part of, say, like the Tea Party before it was really co-opted into the broader MAGA movement.
Yeah.
Those are the people that are, this is ironic. Those are the people that are really pissed off about the Epstein list. And then the sort of like bread and butter Republicans are like staunchly pro Trump on this. And I'm looking at this, I'm like, how, like, what the fuck is going on? Like, because
Yeah.
this is so odd to me.
As many other people have said, I'm not breaking any new ground on here, but this was the dumbest, most unforced error, probably the worst possible thing you could have ever done to derail your presidency. Like, what the heck are you doing, Orange Man? Like, I like you know me. I'm turning Christian. I'm turning more towards religion instead of politics. Although I still believe that you should stay well informed and
Yeah, yeah.
participate in certain ways. But like you all know the people who have been on your channel, and like I was very MAGA for a long time. But like if you want to, it's one thing to what do you say? It's one thing to not deliver on that. But then when you attack your own base and you say, I don't want your support anymore, I'm like, okay, bye then. You don't need it. Fine. Have it your way.
I'm so shocked at the difference between, and this is the broader Trump debate. I'm shocked at the difference in quality between this current administration and his first administration. Like, don't get me wrong.
Oh, yeah.
Like, every president does stupid shit here and there. The man's only human, right? But I feel like this is a complete 180. Like, he's like the stuff he's trying to push through is just so stupid. And it's like,
Some of it.
why are you wait? Not, yeah, that's true, not all of it, but like,
Oh,
so I
there are some ways he's winning so good and so hard.
there are.
Yeah.
Well,
But
the
there are
most,
some other ways. I'm just like, what the heck are you doing?
yeah. Well, like for example, and this is, I'll explain why this, we may not actually disagree on this particular point, but I'll explain why. So his whole trying to change the 14th Amendment, right?
Uh-huh.
Like, I don't agree with him on it, but my problem, again, remember the I hate bad arguments thing, is it doesn't matter if he's right or not because the president cannot amend the Constitution via executive order. And he knows that, or at least he should know that. And if he doesn't know that, the idiots working for him should know that. But they're the ones that are pushing this stupid shit. And they already ruled like, no, the president cannot amend the Constitution via executive order. There is an apparatus to do that, but they know they won't meet the standard because it's a very tall order to amend the Constitution, and they know they won't get it.
Yeah, but I understand also what he's doing too. He's not really looking to change the Constitution itself. What he's trying to do is get clarification on it. And if he can have the Supreme Court just clarify that it doesn't mean anchor babies who made it across the border right as they were giving birth, then he'll be fine with that. That's still a win for him.
The problem is that's not okay. How do I word this? The problem is there's 125 years of precedence in its current interpretation from the Supreme Court. You know, it's not just the Wong Kim Park case that was back in 1908 or whenever it was. Like that was the landmark case that basically gave our current understanding of the 14th Amendment. And the thing is, if you read it, funny thing about the Constitution is it is very much written in clear, plain English intentionally. And one of the things that I've criticized Trump on repeatedly, especially now, and this also ties into his perceived victory, although this is going to come back and bite Republicans in the ass, is now nationwide injunctions can't be enforced nationwide. Well, a lot of the stuff that they stopped Biden from doing was stopped via nationwide injunction.
Yep.
And now that you have this interpretation, you won't be able to do that. And let's say hypothetically that Trump won, which he didn't, but let's say he won his argument about the 14th Amendment. The next time you have a Democratic president, they're going to reinterpret the Second Amendment to mean military only. And it's like it's so frustrating because even when the Republican Party is doing stuff that I like, they're doing it in the dumbest. They're doing stupid shit. They're not thinking beyond the next week. It's like, guys, when you change the law, or even if you change our understanding of the law, they are going to use that against you. And
Yeah, you're,
just
you're
to,
completely right.
yeah,
But what ended up happening, because that same mentality was followed for so long by both sides, oftentimes, is that nothing ever got done, and people
fair
would
enough.
rather people would rather deal with fixing a problem and it creating a new one, and then dealing with that later than nothing getting done at all.
And I agree. And here's where we might come together on this because I'm making an assumption and I want to clarify before I go into this because if we agree, then it's not. But so you agree in the sense that you don't think that the 14th Amendment should apply to just anybody as it's currently
Right.
understood. And okay,
Yeah.
fair enough. And again, like that's I don't agree with that, but there's the discussion that can be had. My biggest problem was Trump trying to amend the Constitution via executive order. But to like
It's
okay,
a
and
tactic, though, to
I
get the Supreme Court to do it for him. So,
well yeah, but he failed. But he did get that. But what
yeah,
I'm saying is a lot of what Trump is doing is going to come back to bite the Republicans in the ass in 2026 and 2028. Like cuz I'm sorry, it's going to happen. There's going to be
yeah.
there's going to be a massive blue wave both those years. It's going to be rough. And much like
I don't know, man.
it's
Ooh.
coming, dude. It's coming.
You
It's
might be
coming.
right, and you know what? I'll shout you out and bring you on my stream, my channel, if you
I'll
end up
come on
being right.
anytime.
But I don't know, man. I honestly think the woke and everything is dead.
Oh, I'm not talking about the woke. See, that's the thing. The woke it's not dead, but it's so okay, here's the thing. And this is gonna be a bit of a history lesson, and then it'll actually lead into the ad spot. So on my other podcast, the Average Intelligence Podcast, we did an episode where because when we had the idea for the episode, it really did look like there was going to be a massive red wave in the midterm elections. This was still under the Biden administration. But before we went, I think it was the day before, the a day or two before, the Supreme Court draft decision leaked about the overturning of Roe v. Wade. So our episode is called Red Wave Incoming, but the whole
We
stream,
still never found out who did it.
well, I have a theory, but the whole stream,
Yeah.
Eric's like, yeah, there's gonna be a massive red wave, and I'm just like, I don't know, man. I agreed with you until that draft decision leaked, and now abortion's too big of an issue for abortion is a huge issue for the left and it splits moderates down the middle and that's why I thought to myself and immigration's kind of the same way because I'm somebody who I vehemently disagree with what Trump is doing for immigration policy, not the border. To me those are two different things,
Okay.
but I would consider myself right on the border. But I still don't think they're doing that right, but it's better than what was. And all the immigration stuff that's happening now, I blame Biden as much, if not more than Trump, because he created the mess that Trump is now.
Yeah. It's a big mess.
Well, it's a huge mess. And here's the thing, even if Trump is just using it as justification, if Biden hadn't done that, Trump wouldn't have the justification. And if Trump is actually trying to clean that up, then he wouldn't be trying to clean up a mess that didn't exist. And that's sort of my leaning. But yeah, I think so. I actually have two arguments. So I think there's going to be a massive blue wave in the midterms because of all the stuff that the Republicans as a party are doing and now not doing. But I think there's going to be a Democrat president in 2028 because who are the Republicans going to run after Trump?
Um, I mean, I think JD Vance would stand a pretty good chance, but
Ah,
it's not no matter who they pick, there's going to be an incredible amount of momentum lost. But
yeah,
the only person that might be able to fix that, and I think it might honestly happen, is Tucker Carlson.
yeah, but Tucker is almost as firmly anti-Republican right now as the Democratic Party is in a different way. And
Yeah,
it's been that way really since Ukraine.
yes,
But I
but
agree with you. I think
I would still
Tucker
take
could be
Tucker.
instrumental.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I would still
that's
absolutely take him. But see, this goes back to the whole religious and Bible conversation. And I have a theory. There's a whole part of the religious right wing that thinks that Trump might be the Antichrist.
Yes.
You ever
Yep.
heard that theory? It's a good theory. Whenever I have an idea for our next show that I said we were going to do together, and I would promote that one extra too. We need to do a watch party for that video, that idea, and we also need to do a on top of that the Michael Knowles, Chris Langan interview. He
Oh, okay.
was formerly the highest IQ in the world, and now he's the second highest IQ in the world. Some Indian youngin recently came up and blew him out the water. Chris Langan averages around 200, and this other guy is like 276. So like, yeah. But you know what? They both believe in God and both say there's an afterlife. So,
oh, interesting. Well, we're gonna do a quick ad break real quick, but I mentioned the other podcast, the Average Intelligence Podcast. So this is just a quick word to give you an idea what that show is all about.
We choose to go to the moon, investigate, and do the other things. Weird.
Someone said that frickin' Panera's Pepsi's taste funny.
Better.
No, I mean,
What?
yeah. What? What's the video that you promote? Okay.
Oh, it's literally just an ad for Average Intelligence Podcast.
Okay. Just checking. But yeah. All right. So we were already transitioning to that. All right. I have a theory for everybody, and I sincerely think this is going to be true. Now, the Bible does say, and it humbled me. My dad reminded me of it. He said, it'll come like a thief in the night, and no one will expect it. Now, I'm sure I could use the logic that if I'm always expecting it, I'll never be caught off guard, but even I will be like, thrown off somehow. That's what the Bible predicts.
Shot glass is evidence.
Yeah. Instead of Trump being the Antichrist, what I think honestly is going to happen is the Bible directly says this. I mean, it already directly says that the world powers are going to declare a war on religion, and then the end will come. It's in Revelation. Everyone else can look it up. The left has already been saying that they want a globalist system and they want to get rid of religion. They're open about what they want. That being said, I think that Trump, in order to get his Nobel Peace Prize and ride off into the sunset and be the greatest president ever, before Lincoln or something, he's going to get the whole world powers together, and he's going to make a treaty with everybody. No more Hamas and Israel war, no more war with Iran, no more Russia war. Everybody is going to be part of this big government system. And then here's the two opposing theories. With the Epstein stuff, this kind of made me think it could be true. Like, I still give him the benefit of the doubt, but I still think it very well could be true. There's two options. Either that Trump is just old and he's imperfect and he makes mistakes and not the perfect representation of the right, but he still tries to do good. I sincerely believe that they'll probably just, as soon as he makes that world treaty, the next night, boom, they'll kill him and then take over the world and declare a war on religion. The left will take over. There might be some sort of saboteur or, backstabber, some Judas, in there. Maybe J.D. Vance, who knows? It wouldn't surprise me.
I didn't know the J stood for Judas.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, with everything he said about him before, that's probably the most likely one. But here's the other one too. You want to know, I think might have honestly happened. And again, for all the Trump supporters out there, I'm not saying this is true. I would bet against it if I had to choose gun in my head. But I'm starting to think more and more with this Epstein stuff that it could be true. We all know that there might not be aliens controlling us, but aliens and the way that demons are depicted in all the pictures, the lore, the Bible, and everything, they look just like aliens. So it could be the same thing. And they have all been chasing eternal life. Because they know they cannot survive on the ethereal. They know they cannot survive with God. They have not lived a righteous life. So they try to prolong their existence here as long as possible forever. I think it's possible, man, that they let Trump into the club. He wasn't a part of the club before, but before he got inside of the presidency, he said, "Okay, you know what? You can be one of us now. You're gonna live forever, and you're gonna exist in this AI virtual reality matrix thing, and you will be one of the few who gets to live forever and be among the upper echelon of, the human, species, because they don't even think that they're actually humans." I think they might have let him in the club, bro.
That might
And I think he
explain
might
the
have taken it.
difference. It might explain the differences in the terms. It's like, holy
Yeah,
shit.
I think they might have.
So
He
yeah,
might have taken it.
this will turn into a debate though, because as
But like after the assassination, bro, like he might have been scared, like and he thought that this was what he was supposed to do for God too. He might have been invigorated, but I know he was scared. Like who wouldn't be? And he's like, all right, stop killing me, you know. And Elon Musk was
but
already on that.
I mean,
But
maybe, but he seemed to. I think that's the moment that won him the election definitively, because
oh yeah,
I think he was going to win, but I mean I think that was the moment where a lot of people, because I even said at the time I was like, hey, look, say what you will about Trump, but it's not every type of person that after getting shot at they bust out of their bodyguard cover and stick their
yeah,
fist in the air. And now granted he knew he had Secret Service, but I mean you don't know if there's another gunman in that moment. You have
yeah,
no idea. So
yeah.
that's not a normal reaction. So I'll give credit where credit's due. But where this might turn into a debate, this is just me, and this has no bearing whatsoever on what you believe. But just for me, I don't take a lot of stock in the Book of Revelation simply because I know that Saint John of Patmos, who was the author, basically, at least as far as what I've read and my understanding, that is basically a giant middle finger to Rome
Mm-hmm.
because they exiled them. There's a lot of imagery in that. Like, for example, 666, the mark of the beast, is a numerical code for Emperor Nero.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. But again, that's where I have to explain this. I don't know. I have a very similar way of studying religious texts that Jordan Peterson does. And that's partially what inspired me to look at the Bible from a different angle. Is I listen to him talk about the Bible, and I'm like, well, I get that. I get. I can get behind that. So in a way, how do I word this? So like, I don't take a lot of stock in Revelation in terms of actual revelation. I view Revelation as a sort of plea. This is where I mean it's just me, right? I think Revelation is a bit of John airing his grievances as humans do, but also a plea to Christendom at large to get away from sort of the structured, how do we say, the co-opting of the religion of Christianity by what realistically was, the Roman sort of system, which would lead to the hierarchy of Roman Catholicism, which was already a thing. But I think that was a plea of John to say, no, let's not become a second Rome here.
Okay, I'll do some research on that. I'll let you know what I come up with.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. But because there's a lot of, and plus, here's the other thing. John was, I don't want to say John was influenced by a style of writing that was present in Jewish texts much earlier, the apocalyptic books like Daniel, for example. That's an apocalyptic book. There's a
Yeah.
You can kind of point them out. There's a lot of fire and brimstone imagery. There's a lot of supernatural sort of. The best I could say is like it's kind of like a horror poem where it's written specifically to kind of instill this idea of like, hey, you better shape the fuck up because it's coming and it might be coming for you.
Yeah.
That
Oh
sort of
yeah,
thing.
absolutely.
It's very
Absolutely.
effective.
Oh yeah, the king of that time was very prevalent. He was a world power by far, and then some. And yeah, I love all the imagery and all the stories that they tell. When like them being thrown to the lions and the angels
Yeah.
protecting them in the middle of
Yeah.
it, and then the other one where they were thrown into an oven and they were just standing around while the people who opened the door, it was so hot, they died.
Yep.
Like, and they were fine, you know.
And there were 4 people in when they put 3 people in. That was mentioned in the sermon
Yep.
today.
Yep.
But also to kind of draw a comparison to a non-religious text is the Divine Comedy, particularly Inferno, but there's a lot of elements of that in all 3 books, right? That sort of apocalyptic writing style. And we know that Dante was criticizing a lot of the Italian states. I think particularly, where was he? Was he from Naples or wherever he was from? Because he had been kicked out. And that book is full. Now he's more direct, right? Because he points certain people out by name, especially in hell.
Dante's Inferno is a great story. I
It's
don't
a
really believe in
fantastic
all.
story. Well, no,
Yeah, I
because
don't really believe in every part of its religious tale,
no,
but
and a
you
lot of it
know,
was made up. And the irony, though, is a lot of, I'm not even going to say Christians, a lot of like the typical Americans' view of what hell is and what it looks like, and even how it's structured, doesn't come from the Bible. It comes from the Divine Comedy. And that's hilarious to me because it is not a religious text. Dante never meant for it to be a religious text. It was never
oh
supposed to be
really?
a
I didn't
religious.
know that.
No, and then the idea that we have of Satan comes more from John Milton's epic
Yeah.
poem Paradise Lost than from the Bible. The idea of now there there's mention of Lucifer being not Lucifer, I'm sorry. There's mention of Satan being cast from heaven, but Milton's idea of that A being named Lucifer and sort of the idea of a war of angels that comes from Paradise Lost.
Yes, that's an interesting thing that I recently ran into on that Chris Langan interview, where he actually differentiates not as 2 different people, but as 2 different ideas or 2 different forces of some sort, but that Satan and Lucifer are different, you know, in
Well,
some way.
Lucifer, the name Lucifer comes from, it's not a mistranslation, but it's a misunderstood. They, I think, is it from Isaiah? It's from an Old Testament book where Lucifer, the morning star, is mentioned, but it in that passage, it's not expressly saying it's Satan or the devil. And then also, I shudder to say this because it may not be a mistranslation, but the word in the original Hebrew in Isaiah that points to the virgin giving birth to the Son of Man, that word in Hebrew can also just, it can be used for both. It can also be used for just a young woman, right? So it it could be or it could not be. But they it's funny because when you structure the canon of the New Testament around that and the fact that it can be totally hung up with one word and we'll never know because we can't ask the original author what did
Right.
we, well, because it's like, okay, you take the for an English equivalent, it's an older word, but the word maiden.
Mhm.
Well, a maiden literally is just is just an unmarried woman, right? However, there were a lot of turns of phrase, particularly in Old English, where maiden was a tongue-in-cheek way of meaning virgin, i.e., a colloquialism in Shakespearean English for virginity was maidenhead. Because there's a joke. What play is that? Is it Romeo and Juliet? There's a Shakespearean, there's a line in a Shakespearean play where there's a turn of phrase where people are talking about cutting off the maidenheads, and what they mean is deflower. But it's a tongue-in-cheek reference to that sort of word. So
Mhm.
that's where I nerd out on this stuff because, and it's an exercise in futility because, like I said, we'll never know because we can't ask, and we have the original script, and that's how we know what word was used in the original Hebrew. And the funny thing is, if you ask a Jewish person, they're gonna say, "Who cares?" Because according to Judaism, that hasn't happened yet.
You want to know something that I thought of, and to me, I've never seen anyone else point this out, and maybe I'm wrong. So if anyone else is, I'm not stealing their idea. I just came up with this on my own. Maybe I'm not the first. But as much as Jews and Muslims hate each other, bro, they're literally like spiritually destined for it. They actually agree on one thing, that Jesus was not the Messiah. That's the craziest shit.
Well,
Y'all agree on one of the most sacred tenements of both of y'all's religions. But why are y'all not getting along so well?
they agree on a lot more than that.
Yeah, I know. I just
Well, believe it or not,
It just came to me the other night.
the major bone of contention, at least according to the Quran, and I could be wrong, so if I am wrong, correct me, but I believe the major point of contention started with, was it Jews in Medina, the Jewish population of Medina, basically not
Yeah.
kowtowing to Muhammad, and that
Yeah,
is
it's
really
definitely-
that's where it that's
Now
where it started.
that's not a part of the Jewish story.
No,
but that
it's
is a
not.
part of the Muslim story.
Correct. Well, because I
Yeah.
think I should really ask my friend Rabbi David Grossbaum about this. So I'm spitballing here. I think the animosity on the Jewish side might just come from a long history of people trying to fucking kill you. And I think
Well-
after a few generations of that, you might start to feel some type of way about it.
Yeah, well, since we're on the subject, I can put an end to this whole Israel-Iran debate right now. I can do it. I can put it all away.
Israel,
I'm really-
Iran, or
I'm-
Israel, Palestine?
Well, Muslims and Jews.
Okay.
I'll put an end to this whole debate, and it'll be inside the moniker of Iran and Israel.
Okay.
We'll do it like that. I'm willing to say what everyone else is scared to say. The Jews are, and everyone who like Ben Shapiro and everything, they're scared to say this. I'll say it. Hamas and all their surrounding ideologies and people who support them were literally allies with Adolf. Literally, you can Google it. Their sons and their grandparents, are what Hamas came to today.
You're referring to
They are never going to get rid of that. It's part of their religious doctrine to, hate, Jews. It just is. It's in the it's what?
Well, it goes before that, but you're referring to the alliance of the Grand Mufti with the Nazi.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's
Yeah,
a
yeah.
thing.
Yeah. So there's never going to be peace there. And you want to know, if you have to choose between the former allies, the children of those former allies, and the Jews, you got to give the benefit of the doubt to the Jews. Now, the people who say that Israel is conducting a direct geno, y'all know what I'm trying to say. They're stupid. They're beyond all. They're not even worth talking.
Because frankly, if
But-
they are, they're doing a really, really horrible
Exactly.
job.
But here's what some people in Israel are doing, because Jews are not perfect either. Not as a
No,
state.
there are certainly factions that
Yeah.
yeah.
What they're doing is they're doing it indirectly. They're doing it slowly, torturously, painstakingly over time. If the world wasn't so anti-Semitic, which a lot of the world is anti-Semitic, and y'all can Google this too. I won't get too much into this, but maybe we could, do a video on this too, and I'll show you all the research. Adolf survived. Like, he wasn't like him and all his cronies. They developed science for everybody. They lived in South America. Google it for yourself. The Argentinian prime minister, or whatever his name is, he declassified all of it. You are never going to fix that relationship. It's just never going to happen. So if you do not have the power to overrule Israel, who is connected to America, and I'm willing to say what all these other American zealots aren't willing to say, they have nukes. They absolutely have nukes. They don't directly deny it.
I think that's known. I think that's a known.
Well, it's obvious.
Yeah.
Even though it's never been directly confirmed, and you will never see one, but it's obvious. But the people always say, how is America's greatest ally? Why do they keep on saying that? What do they do? Blah, blah, blah. They've been caught spying.
Yeah, no, that's a known thing. It's estimated that Israel possesses between 90 and 300 nuclear warheads.
Yeah.
They
but that
have
being said,
to.
I'll
They
tell
have
you
to.
I'll tell you how they're your allies. Jews, but I mean, technically Asians have higher IQs on average, but not by a lot, by very little. And if Japan and people, and people like them had more land to be able to conduct commerce and business deals with, they would be able to beat America. They have the capabilities, they just don't have the resources. Like, especially now. Yeah, they're so much smarter than us, bro. Their society, you go to Japan, the way they conduct themselves, You could go to a bathroom and eat food off of the toilet, and you will be fine.
Yeah,
Like,
there are aspects. However, it's worth noting, and I this is something I've been told, but it did make me think, is I think you're probably 100% right when it comes to like elementary and high school, but there's a reason why, and it's not just Japan, people all across Asia, they come to the United States to study at the,
oh yeah,
you know,
absolutely. A
particularly
lot
at
of
the
it.
graduate level.
Anyways, the reason I was saying that is because the Jews. Who do you think makes all this technology? Who do you think makes the new weapon systems for the United States? Do you honestly think that the Muslims over there and the Palestinians and everyone else are not the dummy shields and the test subjects of these new weapons? They absolutely are. Like, like that's the whole reason. But they can't just come out and say that, because that's the idea of it's horrible. But when they talk about the United States and Israel being the greatest allies, that's why.
Well, I would only push back on that by saying that if that were the case, I think you could manufacture a conflict a lot easier than what happened on October 7th. Or would you just say that was an opportunistic, like it happened, and then they were like, well, this is a fantastic catalyst to test these weapon systems?
It's both. Like usual, the truth is right there in the middle. Just like 9/11, did George Bush literally orchestrate the planes? No. But did he just let it happen? And he maybe could have done more to stop it if he really wanted to? Yeah. Well, it's the same thing when they promoted Hamas. They wanted to get rid of other people. And what they're essentially doing is using this new bad guy to be able to promote the war that they want.
Well, I don't
But they
know.
are bad guys.
They are bad guys. I don't know that they're necessarily promoting Hamas because the PLO was adversarial.
Well, formerly, I'm talking about what Netanyahu did before, not now, obviously.
Right. That's what I'm talking about. But Hamas sprang up because the Israeli government pulled out of Gaza and left it as a self-determinant, I don't know what area, I guess. And then Hamas was elected, much to the chagrin of the PLO, because, and then this is my understanding, obviously I've never been to Palestine, but this is the gist that I've gotten based on what I've read and heard people say, is that basically a lot of people in that. But now I know that Hamas was underrepresented at the polls because a lot of people just didn't vote, but they won the election, and the people that did vote for them often cited the sentiment that the PLO wasn't doing enough for Palestinian rights, the establishment of a Palestinian state, and there's some Israel hate in there too.
Yeah.
But what they didn't count on, and what they should have counted on, is that terrorists will do terrorism, and it's kind of their number one priority.
And you are correct that the abuse that Jewish people as a class have gone through has definitely radicalized some of them, and they want to go off and pick some kids off.
And there are sects of, I don't even want to say sects of Judaism. There are groups of Jewish people in Israel that don't even want to allow Christian worship in that country. They exist.
Now, been videos of them getting spit on, when they visit.
I've seen them too. And the thing is, that is a fringe group. That is not the norm. That is not the stance of the Israeli government, but they do exist. That would be like saying that there are no racists in America. That's just patently untrue. Right. Like, of course there are racists in America.
Here's the problem, though. What it all comes down to in the end is that because Hamas is in power and the people do still want them, because if they didn't want them there, they could overthrow them. I don't care what no one says. That
I don't know. That I don't know about, because, and here's the thing:
poison their husbands, all of them in unison. They could do it, but they don't want to. Yeah. But here's the truth: they're not going to do that and put themselves in that predicament for the sake of stopping a war with Israel. It's never going to happen.
Right.
Even if they don't want the war, they're not going to take the side against their government and their people to stop the war. It's never going to happen. So unfortunately, what's happened is that, yes, Israel does do some horrible things. There are individual soldiers who just pick off different targets because they can get away with it. But the reason they can get away with it is because Hamas is worse. And as long as you keep Hamas in power, you're giving the Israelis a forever cheat card, a forever get out of jail free pass. You have to release the hostages. Every day that you keep the hostages, they have the moral high ground. Even if they were to kill 99% of them, they would still have the moral high ground. So Hamas has to give up the power, and they won't. But that's the only way that you'll be able to fix it, or else they're eventually going to be all wiped out or moved.
I think moved is more likely, but yeah, you've got a point. I mean, that's the same. Now, granted, this is different. I'm not equating Dresden to Hamas, but that's the same sort of reasoning that the firebombing of Dresden isn't treated as like a travesty of history because it wasn't intentional bombing of civilians, even though a lot of people died. But it wasn't, like you said, if it was an intentional genocide of the town, it would have been viewed very, very differently.
Yeah. But you see, the problem is now is that even though it's not an overt one, I kind of said this already, but you allow the bigots and the people who have been radicalized by all the abuse to do things on a small scale covertly. Mm-hmm. And you're shooting your own self in the foot, literally, because of that.
Well, let's, to point to another example is, and this is not a good thing, but it's a real thing. This is one of those areas where it's like, okay, because I am an idealist, right? But I'm an idealist that understand that the real world exists and we have to live in it. So, for example, when the United States...
I would bet I'm more of an idealist than you. I would just bet.
Maybe. I'm pretty idealistic, but just as an example, a lot of people criticize, and they criticize like 80 years later, how the United States went and basically snatched up a bunch of the Nazi rocket scientists and basically gave them carte blanche. They gave them carte blanche, sent them up in cushy jobs, paid them well, basically gave them immunity from prosecution. The thing is, they needed them. They needed them for the space program, and they knew that.
Yeah.
Because they knew, and the Soviets did get to space first, but they didn't get to the moon first, God damn it. But they knew that if the Soviets beat them in the space race, that they would effectively lose at least that's what they thought, they would lose the Cold War. And, as much as people might disagree with this statement, you would not have wanted the Soviet Union to win the Cold War. It's not something you would have wanted.
Like, I don't understand why people have such a hard time grasping the idea that two things can be true at once. I hate, like, most of the time, unless you're like one of those far left radicals that are just, dumb and low IQ, the crazy ones. But like you talk to libertarians and stuff, it's most of the time that both sides are true, at least to a certain extent. It is more than possible that Israel can also be filled with a bunch of horrible people trying to get revenge over the past injustices over the last century. And it can also be true that Hamas is even worse. Or, you know what? They're both equally bad. You know what? I mean, Hamas is worse, but, if you wanted to, if you wanted to go down the middle and try to find some compromise with someone, Ukraine and Zelensky are there. He's a horrible person, should be nowhere near any amount of power, and he should be put to death for his crimes against humanity. And so should Putin. Russia is not any better. In fact, I think Russia is actually worse. Like, the way they crack down on religious entities, especially since I'm trying to become more religious, like, these people don't do anything to nobody. And because they take away from the government's power and they cipher other people away from sucking at the government teat, he locks them up. I'm like, oh my God, you're an evil person. Both things can be true at once, and both people can be just as bad.
Well, to clarify and quote my man Alvarez, who I can never pronounce his name right, but yes, two things can be true at once, but two truths cannot contradict one another.
Right, but people think that you're contradicting when you're not,
and that's the key. Because I used to view that principle of Alvarez as something where, like, well, if this isn't true, then this has to be. I'm going to rephrase that. Well, if this is true, then this can't be true. Well, it depends, because they may not be contradicting one another. You know,
And
it's
and
not
there's
it's not
also other
contradictory to
two.
say it's not contradictory to say I mean it is contradictory to say, well, if Putin's bad, then Zelensky must be good. No, they can
Yeah,
both be pieces of shit, ergo Hitler and Stalin. And they were on opposite
yeah,
sides.
yeah. Like truly, like Stalin has a higher body death count than Adolf is, but I would wager that they're both as equally evil. Like,
In different way, well, the funny thing, and this would be a bit of Jordan Peterson thinking, is they're not as different as they would have liked to have believed. In fact, a lot of the things that they believed in were very similar insofar as, the totalitarian state and the fact that the people were there, that the people existed to serve the state. And
yes,
they were
and
much more alike than even they would care to admit.
and honestly, I think this is the perfect segue. First thing I want to say about Jordan Peterson, a lot of the people have been giving him a hard time on his debate performances and his crying and everything, and they're all legit criticisms. All right, but Jordan Peterson isn't dumb. He wasn't a faker. He was still very good for men in general throughout the. He's been a positive influence on the world. People are making up all these conspiracy theories and trying to think that he was some backstabber or he was never that great. No, he just got burnt out. That's all that happened. He just got burnt out. If you gave him a year or two to just chill and he come back whooping everybody in debates again.
I
But
agree. I agree.
and he's
Well,
ever so slightly, he just ever so slightly leans left. He's about as centrist as you can get. But he is a more mild-mannered, tempered man. Even though he will stand up for what he believes in, you know what? And those kind of dudes cry a lot. Get over it. It's okay, like
what people there's two things that people I think vastly misunderstand about Jordan Peterson, and I touched on this because I did a reaction on Average Intelligence to his Jubilee Surrounded episode, and my main thesis of that video is that all the people that are criticizing Jordan Peterson for this performance do not understand what he was doing. Jordan Peterson is an educator.
mm,
Throughout that entire episode, he is teaching the people that he's debating how to make their points better. And he's challenging them in certain aspects that, if you don't look at it through that lens, can look like he's moving the goalposts or being nitpicky on a certain point. That's not what he's doing. Because when somebody says some out of left field shit, he'd say, well, why are you saying that? That's,
I get it. I can
yeah.
kind of see that.
And then here's the thing. Jordan Peterson's propensity for crying, I think, and having not spoken with the man, this is just my theory. I think that comes from the things that he has thought about for the vast majority of his career are not pleasant things. He studied, in particular, it seems he studied a lot about the Soviet Union, but also the Nazi regimes. I still to this day bring up his point about, you know, his sort of idea that if you were a German in 1930s, you probably would have been a Nazi too. And
Yeah.
that's a tough pill to swallow. But when you do, it's not a pleasant experience. So I think after thinking about this and teaching about it and lecturing about it and reading about it for decades, he has studied the worst of what humanity is capable of. So yeah,
Yeah.
I think that's going to break you down. I truly do. I think that's
Yeah.
going to break you down a little bit because there
It
are
absolutely
times.
does.
Well, it's like when you watch. I'm gonna. I've brought up this movie before, but I don't think I brought it up with you. I don't know. Have you seen the movie Flowers of War?
No.
Okay, so that is a movie. It's a weird category in my sort of film recommendation list. There's a couple movies like this where actually a movie you would probably really enjoy. Have you seen Martin Scorsese's Silence?
Don't think so. But
You
I'm gonna look it up after.
you would like it. I recommend Flowers of War too, but for different reasons. So what those two movies have in common is they're great films. They're well made. They have a really, really strong message. They're not pleasant to watch. And I'm not scared to admit this with Flowers of War particularly. The first time I watched it, I had to take a break because it's I'm not gonna lie, I bawled like a child. it's not a good. It's a great movie. It's not a pleasant experience. And then I watched it again to prep for another video, and I didn't cry this time because I knew it was coming. But I had to take another break because it's just. I recommend watching it in parts because
All right,
it's
I'll
heavy.
need you to send these in text to me afterwards.
Yeah, it's heavy. Now, Silence isn't as bad, but Silence really got me thinking about Christianity and faith. Like, but that's what the movie's about, right? But
Okay.
again, it's a tough movie. It makes you really think about what it means to have faith. It's a tough watch. It's not a
Oh, absolutely.
particularly, yeah, it's not a particularly fun movie, but it does kind of make you think about the idea of, say, there's a lot of Christians in America that say things, and I'm not trying to cut them up, but this is just true, where they're like, I would never deny Christ. Well,
Oh,
that's
Peter did
not,
this time.
well, but here's the thing. So I'm not going to spoil it for you, but if you've seen Silence, you know what I'm talking about. It's a lot easier to not deny Christ when it's your life at stake. But what about when it's others? And I watched this happen in the movie, and I went, fuck. Never thought about that before. Because they don't really talk about it in Christianity as a religion. They don't really they talk about self-sacrifice because it's a tenet of it's a core tenet. I mean, that's the deal, right? But they
Yeah.
don't talk about the sacrificing of other people. And that to me is the magic of that movie. So I'm tying
Yeah.
this back to
Well,
Jordan Peterson.
yeah, it
And
goes back to Adam and Eve, basically. That's the sin of Adam. Not Eve, but Adam.
indirectly, but yeah, there's a point to be made there.
Yeah.
So my point about Jordan Peterson, and then I'm going to segue into my dirty capitalist needs to sell you shit. Um, I'm often perturbed and surprised by the number of people that criticize Jordan Peterson and have not watched a single one of his lectures, haven't read a single one of his books, haven't watched one of his videos on YouTube. It's like,
Mhm.
really? I read the Communist Manifesto just so I could cut it to shit.
Exactly.
Like, you have to know your opposition. And funnily enough, this will shock you, and then I'll lead into as this leads into capitalism. You know how communists always say, well, real communism's never been tried?
Uh-huh.
They're actually right. Real
Okay.
communism, but neither has real capitalism.
Oh, yeah.
There's always been another force at work. So now whenever I debate a communist, they're going to say that, and I'm going to be like, okay, I will give you that, but you have to grant me that real capitalism has never been tried either.
All right. You send me the clip when you do it.
Yeah, I will. But anyway, because I am a dirtily capitalist whore, um, listen, if you're doing business these days, you need a website. And if you're selling anything, you need an online store. Well, I'm here to tell everyone here, look no further than Shopify. I use Shopify. Shopify is the greatest tool. Having used other tools, I will stand on the rock and shout Shopify's praises because there is no other platform that makes it as easy, as helpful, and as convenient to set up your online store than Shopify. I set up my most recent online store that I built. I had it set up in an hour with all my products, all my pricing. It's so much easier to change things than the other, applications that I was using. It's all integrated into the same program. You don't have to integrate other things except if you want to sell directly through social media, which is so much easier to do. In other platforms, it's impossible. And here's the best part. Here's the best part, Sosa. If you sign up for Shopify today, you can sign up with an annual plan, and your first 3 months are only $1 each by using the link in the description. So you can get
What?
started. Yeah, you can get started and only pay $3 for your first 3 months. So if your product is good, you can make your annual fee for Shopify back before you even have to pay
Thank you, Mr. Jakey Man.
it. You are welcome.
You know what? We were talking about how close the people like Adolf and Stalin were to each other. I think that perfectly segues into the rightward factions that could be so completely different between Jordan Peterson and Andrew Wilson.
I was,
You like
yeah.
that one?
Now, okay, now before we dig into this one, I want to be fair. The only stuff I've seen of Andrew Wilson, I've never watched an entire episode of whatever because I can't do it. Um, I
Well, he has
haven't.
you should look at his videos on there.
What's that?
I said he has his own YouTube channel called The Crucible, and you should just look
Oh,
at the videos on.
I did not know that. I might check that out.
Yep.
Now I have watched like not just TikToks. I've seen full clips, and I can't. That guy is just. Ugh. I can't stand the guy. I just ugh.
Well, here I'm going to cover the religious aspect of this first because he is mostly right, but there is a little bit that's wrong, but he's still mostly right.
Because no one's perfect, right? I got you.
Yeah, it's all situational too. If you've looked at any of his videos on his channel, he openly admits that him being a little troll and winning debates for the ego is his sin. Like he admits it. That he takes full responsibility for it, and he actually tries to tone himself down, but he knows he needs to work on it. What he is doing is he is pushing back against the leftist PC culture by doing that, as many people like Myron Gaines and other, provocateurs like Tate are doing and stuff like that. And I think that that is a truly important thing. That's why comedians are so important. They tell the most outlandish, most racist, most inappropriate jokes, because it's funny. As long as it's done with a good heart, then it's going to be funny. And we get to admit the truths about ourselves or just laugh at them. So what he's doing is breaking that down. And what he is also doing by embarrassing these people is showing how crazy they are. Because if you talk respectfully to a left, they can just do these platitudes and, oh, this, and I just want this, but if you actually really put them on the grill, then you can show how crazy they actually are, which will repulse more people back to Christianity and away from that craziness at the very least. That's what he's doing there too. So, in my opinion, it's worth it. Now, you do have to be careful because if you get too offensive, and offensive is a subjective term, but the scriptures also tell us to go out of our way not to be offensive, because even if we're right, it literally says this, even if you're right, it won't be received well.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something that he could probably do with learning a little bit better. He tries to, but maybe he could still be better. So we're supposed to still tailor our message towards what will be most received well, but he gets a lot of good feedback from it, and it really does draw a lot of people to Christianity. I've seen his DMs. I've talked with him. I've emailed him. He still hasn't debated me. He agreed to debate me at some point, but dude is crazy. Like he's just going bonkers off the internet. He's on Piers Morgan. He don't have time for me, but hopefully he'll keep his word one day. Because I was one of the ones that supported him when no one knew about him.
Yeah.
So that's my take on why I think it's still a good thing overall, and
Well, okay, and here's the difference. I would never call for somebody to be like I don't even think Nick Fuentes should be deplatformed, and I can't stand that motherfucker.
who's a
But
leftist and voted for Kamala and Biden.
Nick Fuentes?
Absolutely, bro. I will send you the video right away. Anyone else can easily Google it. He voted for Kamala.
Okay, well, fair enough. But no,
Yeah.
I've never advocated for him to be deplatformed. But, and this is, I understand, I'm opening up myself to this too. When you say shit on the internet, you are inherently giving other people the right to criticize your arguments. And all I'm going to say about this is if you constantly make the case that women need men to open jars for them, you better be able to open the fucking jar. That's all I'm going to say.
No, you're absolutely right. And that's why I think, people like Tate, they get too bad of a rap because he teaches men to be strong. He bashes the men just as much as the women. We all do. But the reason why I agree with the more eccentric way of going about it as compared to you, because I understand your side. I really do.
Well,
But
not to cut you off, but I do want to clarify one thing because this is a criticism that's been levied at me, and I understand it's a criticism of online content. My brand of debate and not just debate, but like my brand of debate and messaging is not conducive to online success. It's not.
Yeah.
It's not. It's not sensationalist enough. Now, thankfully for me, my goal isn't to get rich. If I get rich, that's great, but that's not. And much to my detriment, it seems, at least to other people, because this has been pointed out. I'm not meaning to gloat here, but this has been said, is that I have certain.
Look,
Well, no, I've been
I'm
told.
betting on
No, my partner, my business partner Max will always say this. Is he says your biggest problem is also the best thing about you, and is that there are lines that you will not cross for any reason whatsoever. And I'm like, yeah, that's again probably to my detriment, but I just can't do it. And one of those things is, I can't be overly sensational because there's always a but. There's always a but, there's always an exception. Now, I will
But
critique bad
fuck the
arguments.
buts and the exceptions. That we go by general rules. We operate on generalities. We don't operate based on the midget, or the guy with 6 fingers. Humans have 5 fingers.
Yes, but there are sometimes, because like I agree with the point you're making there, but there are sometimes where the but is a little bit bigger than the person making the argument would like to admit.
Yes, but enough to make it such a big point to where you see what the problem is that everyone obfuscates off the point being made to go off into these exceptions and stuff, and unfortunately the women do that. And like I was saying before, the reason why I kind of go along with this way of doing it is because unfortunately girls have become the bigger problem in today's society, and it's not all their fault. Again, it's still men's responsibility to fix things. We're the leaders, we're supposed to be, but so it's a complicated thing. Like I said, I'll bash the men just as much. It's still our responsibility in the end. But it used to be in biblical times that the men were the ones who were actually a little bit more jerky. There were plenty of whores out there and everything like that too. The Bible directly states stories of them. But Jesus had to tell the men to stop divorcing their wives because they were getting old.
Yeah.
Like men had the capability of being real shitbags too. Like, because that's a fucking horrible thing. Like,
Well,
to do.
especially in a society where a woman cannot inherit property or have
Exactly.
yeah, that's a drastically shitty thing to do. But funnily enough, I have a retort, an Andrew Wilson related retort, and this is a case of one argument. I understand this, but there are situations where even one but is enough to dismantle the argument, and I will use an Andrew Wilson. And if this was taken out of context, please let me know. But I think I saw the entire clip. There were several clips making the rounds where Andrew Wilson is essentially, at least from an argument's perspective, he's advocating sexual assault. And here's the
Oh
thing.
yeah. No,
Here-
yeah, that's completely out of context. He was literally mocking the liberal person's debating. He
Okay,
was saying what
can
he
you give me
mocking
context?
him for that conclusion.
Okay, can you give me context? Because and this goes back. I still have a point because again, there's optics here.
Sure.
But because
I got
I couldn't
context.
believe he was serious. I'll just be
No,
frank.
he wasn't serious. No,
Okay.
like I'm glad that I'm here to clarify this for you. In the debate, they were talking about that very thing that you and I were just talking about, and Andrew Wilson picking apart this liberal guy that he was debating with, is arguing from the exceptions and not the generalities.
Okay.
Like Andrew, what they were discussing was, that the actual biblical patriarchy, male leader, women submit, all this stuff is actually better for society. That's the argument. And
Okay.
he would point out all these exceptions to the rules about religious people doing horrible things, which they have, Ugh.
Yeah.
It stinks, unfortunately, because it makes the actual good spiritual people look bad. But I won't get off into that tangent. He was using the exceptions and he was calling him out on it. And so the liberal, I don't exactly remember what the liberal guy said, but he started trying to twist his words into different things. And Andrew Wilson went along with the argument about, sexual assault and his wife not being in the mood and all that stuff. And he's just like, okay, so should I make arguments for the exceptions? Like, do you know how many women report of really liking the fantasy of being raped? and just like that's the number one, porn thing, and women, had how much they come during that. Everyone else, y'all can look that up. There are lots of women have really strong pleasure orgasms during that stuff because they've been genetically modified to like that stuff. It's a survival tactic.
Yeah, I can still make my point, but I'm glad you clarified.
Yeah.
So
it's a survival tactic for everybody. Wait, hold on. Let me finish. It's a survival tactic for everybody else because back in the day, women, if you resisted, you would get killed. It was caveman days. There wasn't no society protecting you or anything. So in order to be able to fix that problem for yourself and that so that women wouldn't go into absolute depression and just, off themselves the next day because something so horrible was done to them, evolution came along and said, okay, you're going to start liking this stuff. So that they didn't mind it so much.
A lot of women do, though.
If
that happens to them.
You understand what I'm trying to say, though.
It's something that can happen because evolution is also adaptation is not universal.
And so oh, sorry.
I was going to say let's for the sake of me making my point, let's assume that someone is making the point that that he's making the point that this is a hypothetical. But let's just say that someone is having a debate and somebody makes the point, and it may be even a legitimate point. Let's just say that he makes the claim that 99% of women enjoy the practice of a sexual assault. Well, if there's one woman on planet Earth that does not enjoy it, that is enough of an argument because by its nature, that takes away someone's consent to have something done to them. So if there's one person on planet Earth that does not give consent to that, that is argument enough to dissuade the practice from being widespread and done.
Right.
But that ties into the bigger idea of consent being honored.
Sure. And see, my argument to that is the same as Andrew Wilson's, is that it doesn't mean we should disregard the rule. It just means that we should be accepting of the exceptions.
Because I agree with you that when you're making arguments, we often, just for the sake of brevity, we have to rely on generalizations. But I will be honest, I've stopped doing that as much. Because to me, and it depends on what you're arguing, to me, sometimes making a generalization can cheapen your argument. But sometimes I get it. Sometimes for brevity, we have to, it's like you said, humans have 10 fingers.
Yeah.
It depends.
This is the entire basically system, what the fight is all about. The entire fight for the United States and essentially the world is bringing men and women back to a moral state, and you can only do that with God. And I used to not exactly believe that, but it's true. You can only do that with God. Humans cannot do it on their own. So that's literally what they're fighting about. And the argument is about a generality. And the disagreement is the biblical standard the correct way? Is following God the correct way?
I still struggle with, I shouldn't say struggle. I'm still debating that because this is actually kind of what spearheaded my regression. Is the idea that because I do think that there are certainly moral people that are not religiously involved. However, you can, and many people do, make the case that even if you as an individual are not religious, the society that you live in is certainly, if not founded by, it's influenced by, sort of that Judeo-Christian ethic. So even if you are not a Christian or a Jew or a Muslim or whatever religion is around the area you live, you're still affected by the morality of that religion.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm still wrestling with that, to be honest, because there are definitely movements that have not been religiously affiliated, but you can always go back and make the case. It's like, well, yeah, humanism wasn't directly calling on Christianity, but it was certainly influenced by it. That's undeniable.
Sure.
Even if they're not going to take it.
Yeah, and the most common retort, my retort, Andrew Wilson's retort is, okay, then you have to be able to explain where you get your morality from.
And that's the thing, because you can always tie it back to, at least certainly by today's standards, you can almost always tie that back to a Judeo-Christian Abrahamic principle.
But even more important than that, because I actually believe that you should try to include as many people in any of your movements and ideas as you can.
Mm-hmm.
Christianity, I absolutely agree. Number one, that's just mine, and I'm going to stand forever by that. But leading them to God is the even bigger premise that you're going for. Lead them to God, and you cannot have any morality without God. It's just simply not possible.
Because and this is something that I'm thinking out loud a bit. This is something that bounces around my head every couple of days. Is you say something like that. So I'm not necessarily saying that I agree, but I don't disagree. I'm trying to work that out. And because
Yeah,
I'll be honest, I think you're right. But the thought that always bounces around my head is shit. I lost it. What did you just say?
trying to remember exactly the way I
Yeah,
said.
that you can't have morality
There
without
is no
God.
morality without God.
Right, right. Okay. So that leads into the point that I was basically making earlier is it's like, okay, yes, I can come to certain ethical ideas without necessarily directly referencing the Bible, but again, is that just because I live in a society that's heavily influenced by the
Yeah, that's
Judeo-Christian
exactly
ethic?
what it is.
Yeah, and it's like, well, because you can go anywhere on Earth and there are different value systems. So if humans are left to their own devices, it's simply whatever region you're in dictates the morality of that region. It's not a universal thing.
Ah, here's the thing. Here is the universal thing though that you can find everywhere across the world. You can directly correlate and show in measurements a country's success with their religion,
Oh no,
with
yeah, yeah, okay, I should clarify.
their
I'm
belief
talking
in God.
about I'm talking about little things. I'm talking about
Okay.
little things. Like for example, we were talking about Japan earlier. You know, in the United States, the individual is regarded higher than the group, and it's the complete opposite over there. So for you to say, well, that's not a good example because we would frown on that too, but for different reasons. What's a good example here? Like okay, here's a good example. So in the United States we view individual rights, so I'm going to use the freedom of speech, right? We view that as a paramount right that shall
Yeah.
not be denied, right? But in other countries, you're whether you're legally enforced or not, you're certainly in certain areas culturally enforced to shut the fuck up, to not ruffle
Yeah.
feathers. Whereas here it's very much frowned upon to stifle someone's speech for any reason.
Yeah. But even that's an easy answer if you just look at it from a godly lens. God gave us free will, so whichever one leans more towards free will is going to be the more correct answer.
Sure, that's what I'm getting at. But in other cultures, there's whether it's compulsory or cultural.
And those cultures aren't as good as ours.
I mean, fair enough. You can certainly argue that point, and I won't disagree with it because I still believe this is the greatest country on earth. But
Oh yeah, and the Bible directly says it: by the fruits you shall know them.
I was just gonna say scoreboard, but
Yeah, that too. But works just as good, and that's a universal constant. Equal reaction, reaction. Your fruits are going to show. There is such thing as free will and bad luck. Because free will exists, luck has to exist. It's unfortunate.
oh
So you
really?
might be a great person and get cancer one day, but generally, you are going to receive the greater ends of life by being a better person.
Hold on, let's dig into that because now that interests me. So you're saying that because free will exists, luck has to exist. I'm gonna take a stab at this.
Yeah.
And you can tell me if I'm because that made a light bulb go off. So, are as an example of that, so because free will exists for all humans, so for example, I can decide to throw a can out my window of my car in the morning, and
Exactly.
that can causes another car to do something and crash into somebody's house.
Yep.
I've never thought about that before, but I think you just explained luck.
Yeah.
Holy shit. It's mind blown.
Tell you,
Okay.
man. I tell you, man. Like I retired from fighting, and I've been delving into this shit. Oh my word, man.
I've literally never thought about luck that way before. That is wild to me.
Yep. And because free will exists, See, God, there was a Star Trek episode on this. I love how we can just link everything up. Remember?
Did you just explain how evil exists?
Yes, I did.
Holy shit. Okay.
I was literally about to get into that, bro. I was literally about to get into that. It all makes sense coming from the Bible. But you remember that Star Trek episode? We're gonna do some glazing at Deep Space Nine later, but this one was Next Generation with the girl who was an actual Q, and Q came and tried to train her.
Yep.
And she forced Will Riker to fall in love with her for a bit, and she realized that no, it's not the same.
Yeah.
Well, that is exactly how God feels about life. That's exactly how he feels. It is literally the exact same thing. He has to give us free will for our devotion to him to matter.
Well, because as much as it's the same reason why, the genie in Aladdin can't force somebody to fall in love, because as much as you may want it, if it's not genuine, then it's not
I love seeing the light bulbs go across your head, bro. I love it. It's awesome.
Oh, believe you me, they're gonna be there's months worth of shower thoughts there.
Yeah, I can't wait we're gonna do that live reaction review to that Chris Langan interview. I'm serious, man. We're going to do it. It's life changing. It really is.
Out of curiosity, this is pure curiosity. It's not a judgment at all. But like, what branch or denomination of Christianity are you part of, if at all?
Well, I'm going to admit that I'm still working on myself, and while I'm close, I'm not all the way there yet. So I don't want to represent the religion until I am
fair enough,
absolutely good myself. But I will tell you that I'm on my way, and I'm really close. So that being said, I'm leaning towards Jehovah's Witnesses.
Really? Okay, that's not the first. Yeah. That's not the first pick I would have made, but yeah.
Yeah. No, I was raised around that religion and left it for a long while, and I definitely paid the price and have had all these. After doing all this studying, I'm like, oh my God, God is the real thing. Like, it all makes sense now. I understand your view on Revelation, but you can, if you literally read the scriptures, you can literally make it like a timeline on the news. Like, every event is happening like a prophecy.
That's one of the greatest aspects of apocalyptic style literature is it's intentionally
they do follow the same trends. Yeah,
it's written in a way where you can sort of connect the metaphors. I'm not going to say they're vague, because they're not vague. They, on the surface, they seem very precise, but like, there's no way in hell St. John could have known that the sigil of the nation of England was going to be a lion. There's no fucking way.
Yep. And see, here's the other interesting thing. This will really blow your mind. Is it possible to have a perfect universe? It absolutely is. Where no one commits any evil? It absolutely is. But because free will exists, evil essentially has to exist.
Yes, because without evil, there is no good.
The possibility. And if something is possible, there will be at some point in eternity where it will happen.
Well, that's true in physics. That's demonstrably true in science.
Right.
For every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction.
Right. So literally, we were made with the purpose to prove ourselves that we love God, and we will be happy for it. That's the whole trade-off. And that's literally the entire reason why Satan has caused this war against God and caused all this misery on the earth and inside the universe and wherever else he's been, probably, is that he doesn't like that. Yes, you have free will, but you do not have another choice than to follow God for success. And he hates that. That's literally the entire, I think the word is like hypothesis or something. But it's literally the whole thing with the world today. They want to be able to do what they want to be able to do. And they can't do that. They have no choice but to follow God. And if they don't, they're not going to survive. They hate that. That's all people want to be able to do. Like, the people in government, are a lot of them peds? Yes, but it's not as simple as that. What it really is that they don't want to just be able to suck the blood of kids. What they want is to be able to do whatever they want to do. They want to be God. They want to be in power. They want to live forever doing what they want. And because that's not possible, they rebel, and they make everything bad for us.
There's a lot to unpack there. Just
Yeah.
me personally, I'm not, and I totally not discounting the fact that I could be and probably am wrong, but personally, I don't believe in hell in the generally accepted Christian sense.
Neither do
But
I.
that's a whole different can of worms.
I completely agree with you. And actually, Chris Langan agrees with you too.
Oh, okay.
He
Interesting.
This is a basic summarization, not a super detailed one, but we can talk about it. He says that hell is not a literal fiery demon place like is depicted a lot of the time, but hell is our own making of our own mind and our own universe. That this is the first stage of our lives, and we have afterlives. We have the ethereal. We have other dimensions. They're all connected to God. They're all part of the universe. Then they're all the dimensions are all tied to God. But still, this is the first stage. And this first stage determines how the rest of our ethereal lives are going to go. And it goes in a circle. It all goes in a cycle. But wow, what was the point? I got off into a little tangent. I'm sorry.
I'm not really sure, but it's because I should clarify my whole bit about hell. And again,
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, but this is very much a me thing, and I've gotten some pushback from pastors, but to me, sort of my belief is that when somebody says something, I take it at face value, until proven otherwise, right? So, to me, when Christians say that Jesus died to save everyone from their sins, I take that very literally. I take that as to mean that is an unconditional sacrifice. But further reading in Christian dogma sort of turn that into a conditional sacrifice. But when you look at how it's written in, sort of like the main part of that section of the Gospels, it is very much written as save for the whole whoever believes in me thing part of the Gospels. But many people talk about Christ's sacrifice as, absolving everyone of all their sins. So to me, if everyone is absolved of all their sins no matter what, then hell is not only not necessary, it can't exist because nobody's there.
Yeah, because that whole line of thought that you just drew out very well, by the way, is completely wrong.
Fair enough.
The whole point of Jesus dying was to atone for what Adam lost. All right. And you actually have to think about the story from God's point of view, and no one ever does. Maybe you have, I don't know, but I think it's a fascinating thing. Look at it from his angle. Because it wasn't humans who sinned first, it was angels who sinned first. Perfect beings, way closer to him than we ever were. They literally helped create the rest of the universe that he made with God. They've been with him for eons and eons and eons, and they betrayed him. And that's why they had to be cast down to the earth, because God is perfect and he cannot coincide with evil. He cannot coincide with good. It would be a contradiction. So he had to be thrown down to the earth. And that's why all of us have been infested. But literally, Satan has turned away angels. They're called demons now. Turned away demons, angels, whatever you want to call them, from God. And Satan never called out his power directly. He didn't say, hey, I'm more powerful than you, God. No, he said, my way of doing things is right, not you, God. And he got other demons to believe it. That's why they became demons. So why does suffering exist? Why does evil exist? Because it's not a power dispute between Satan and God. God is literally trying to save his own angels, his own creations, from the evil that free will brings. He's trying to prove the point to the other angels that his way is not the right way to do things. Living for yourself, doing what you want, being your own God, everything's about me. Why do I bother caring about life or what I do? Because we're all going to be, gone later anyway. So why does life matter? That's literally what happening. That's literally what is happening with young kids today and today's society. So why does suffering exist? Why does evil exist? Because free will once again, but God doesn't stop it. He doesn't stop it because he can't. He doesn't stop it because it has to be proven. It has to be shown that we can't do it without him.
Well, I would say to push back and say now it's a debate. So to me, and again, this is just the way I'm viewing it, and I've been told I'm wrong by so many people, but this is where I just get stuck, right? So
Okay.
to me, that sort of sacrifice for it to become conditional,
Love is conditional.
is it though?
Yes, it absolutely is.
See, I disagree because, but let me put this into context of Jesus dying. Is for a sacrifice that great, if it wasn't universal, then what's the point? It's just another covenant at that point. But the root of Christianity is the salvation of the world. So
Oh, I see. I see.
if it's just another covenant, then I mean it's not a big deal. But to make I just don't I can't reconcile how I'll put it in the words I always say, and I understand this sounds insanely hubristic, but this is how I feel about it.
I get it. I'm giving you the
Well,
benefit of the doubt. What you
what
mean?
what pushed me away from faith, because believe it or not, when I was younger, my goal in life was to become a pastor. It's what I
Mhm.
wanted to do, and it was one sermon that kicked me off the path. And it was this guy who was a guest pastor, because my pastor was my friend. He would have never said something to this, but I had a problem with it. So at this point in my life, I knew people who were Jewish, who were Muslims, who were Buddhists. I knew people of varying faiths, right? And he basically got up there and for 40 minutes was preaching that if you don't believe in Jesus, then you're going straight to hell. It doesn't matter if you're a good person. It doesn't matter if you've never had the opportunity. It doesn't matter if you were from a place where Christianity is not prevalent. It doesn't matter. You're going to hell. And I was like, that doesn't sit right with me, first of all, but it also doesn't make sense to me. And I kind of came to the conclusion then and there that if God, as we have painted him, is so cruel to make that sort of sacrifice conditional to admittedly horribly imperfect beings, that the only caveat is that, okay, yeah, like I'm gonna wipe away all of your sins, no matter what, complete salvation, but you have to be in my fan club.
Gotcha.
That to me just I how and this is how I personally, this is the hubristic part, is if God is about that, and I understand the consequences of this thought, mind you, if that's what God's about, I don't want anything to do with it. Now, my mistake at the time was that was me moving away from the church as opposed to trying to seek a better understanding. That was my mistake at the time. And that's why I've changed my thinking on it, is because now I'm trying to reconcile how I feel about it with the church and to a certain extent with God. So,
I get what you mean, and my answer is going to sound like some sciencey excuses BS.
hey, it's cool. This
I'll
is a
admit
debate.
that. Yeah, but this is the truth, and maybe I'll figure out a way to better explain it the more we talk. But there is no other way to do it besides his way. There can only be perfection, you know, because the essence is who he is. He is a being of power beyond anything we can possibly comprehend. So we just have to accept the fact that there is no other way but him, and you cannot succeed
I'm not
without him.
disputing that. I'm not disputing that. I'm disputing. Okay, so here, and again, this is more
Not that
my
he made
view.
it that way; it's that it can't be any other way.
Well, okay, let me reword, because I don't disagree with what you're saying, but I think where we disagree is the interpretation of that. So
Okay.
here's my shtick. So like I've always viewed, and this is how I reconcile the Old Testament with the New Testament, by the way, too. So this is a me thing, but I've always viewed the story of the Bible as the journey of humanity's progression and God's frustration with us as an imperfect thing. To where
Yeah.
finally God just goes, well, since you fuckers can't get it right, I guess I'm just gonna not this is a little tongue in cheek. I don't mean it, but like
I get it.
I
Man.
always saw the sacrificing of Jesus as the final sacrifice because God understands that we are so imperfect and we're shit, right? And in spite of us, that sacrifice was made. And to me, this is where I have trouble reconciling because I agree with you. Particularly if you believe in Christianity, then you have to accept that it is God's way and that you cannot succeed without God's way. I don't know of many Christians that would dispute that. My only thing is that just based on the nature of the sacrifice, it seems odd to me that that big of a sacrifice would be made and be conditional. If that does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense. You are, and I don't mean,
Go for it.
you know what I mean when I say this. You know. But that's the same argument that Satan made. I want to be free. I want to do my things my own way. There's just no other possibility. Like, I know I already said that, just
I think what I'm having trouble explaining to you because I understand what you're saying. The difference is that we can't do it without God, but th- okay, let me rephrase that. God knows that we can't do it without him, but he also knows that we're so stupid and sinful that he basically has to do it for us because we're not as a group of an entire planet worth of people, we're not going to get it right.
yeah. I think an important clarification is that it doesn't make much sense when we're imperfect, but that's the whole point in Jesus' sacrifice. And I think that little bit of twist, just little different way of looking at it, it's not that he died for all of our sins. He didn't die for all of our sins, quote unquote, even though you know what I mean when I say that.
I was going to say
What he did, what
the
he
book says
died
differently, but
to take away the imperfection that we are all plagued with and give us a chance to become perfect. That's what the sin that Adam and Eve inherently passed down to each and every human, that it could not be escaped. That's what Jesus was lifting from, humans.
I understand what you're saying. The only place I get tripped up is that the book says different. The book literally says
I get it.
that Jesus died for our sins.
I get it, but like, I know this is going to sound like a BS. I know it does.
Are you
but
going to be hubristic too?
no, I'm just going to be like, but you got to reason things out. Like, they talked differently back then.
Mm-hmm.
There are different interpretations to different words, and people disagree on interpretations all the time.
Sure.
But we get the general message. Like, and Jesus clarified this for all of us. Like, all these debates and philosophies, they're important, but they're not nearly as important as this. Is that Jesus summed up the entire law of everything you're supposed to do within 2 rules. And as long as we follow these 2 rules and we all agree on these 2 rules, everything will be okay. Even if you're a different religious sect or anything like that. It's that you love God with your whole heart, soul, mind, and strength. What is love? As the Bible directly points out, the reason he created us is because he wanted something to love. And he loves us because he created us. So it's sacrificing of yourself for somebody. There is more happiness in giving than there is in receiving. So that is the path to life. That is the only possible path to life and a perfect life and perfect happiness where everyone, we have to choose that still. Jesus just gave us the choice, like I said before. We have the opportunity now, whereas we didn't before because a perfect man and woman messed everything up for us, and there's no way we could ever overcome it because we're already imperfect.
See, it's not frustrating. It's frustrating because I totally understand what you're saying and I don't necessarily disagree with it. And this is my problem too. I'm having trouble connecting that to what the scripture says.
Right. And to love everyone as you would your own self. Treat everyone the way you want to be treated, you know.
Yeah. Well, no,
that's all it hangs around.
Yeah. No, that's the easy part, right? As far as understanding.
The only necessary part, really.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So
Well, we could stay down this rabbit hole, but you said what do you want to argue about Star Trek related? Can we both at least agree that that wasn't God in Star Trek 5?
no, I didn't want to debate about Star Trek. I just wanted to do some glazing. I just wanted to tell everybody, because we've been saying how long we wanted to do a Deep Space Nine video. Just Deep Space Nine is awesome, guys. If you like Next Generation, born to like that, y'all are missing out. Like if I had to watch one, I mean, Next Generation has all the philosophical, you know, and all that other cool stuff, and I definitely love it for that. But more entertainment-wise, I go with Deep Space Nine.
You know what's funny about that actually is because to tie it in, it's like a circle. To tie it into a lot of things we've been talking about, Next Generation has a lot of the philosophy, but Deep Space Nine puts that philosophy to task.
There we go. Yeah.
And it can be frustrating to some Trek viewers because the values of Starfleet get tested in Deep Space Nine in ways that they have never tested in other series.
I'm glad we just started talking about Star Trek now, because I'm just starting to feel that. It's perfect timing.
There you go. But yeah, no, that is a hill that I will die on to this day. Now, granted, I haven't watched all of the newer. In fact, I have not watched any of the newer Trek.
They're not better.
Yeah. But as far as everything I've seen Trek related, and this includes the original series, Deep Space Nine is by far my favorite. I think it's the best. I think it's got the best written characters. I think it's got the best arcs. Now, my bias, I like long-term linear storylines.
Yeah. If there is someone that I try to model myself after, and who I think I take after, like just entire personality-wise, it would be Cisco.
And it's worth noting, Q is in one episode of Deep Space Nine. Cisco punches him in the face as he's never seen again.
Yeah, and I absolutely love Q in everything he's ever in.
But I think that's the dichotomy between Next Gen and Deep Space Nine it's unintentional. But I love how what it says is that there's no universal right way to do things necessarily, at least as far as non-religiously. But like it depends on the situation. And I think the writers did that on purpose. They sum it up with the next line when Q's like, "You hit me, Picard never hit me," and all Cisco says is, "I'm not Picard." That was very intentional by the writers, and it worked.
Oh yeah, straight stuff.
That turned a lot of people off. It did. I'm like,
it did. I didn't know that.
Oh yeah, a lot of people said Picard would never have hit Q, and to that I would say maybe he should have.
Yeah, I mean he wanted to. You don't think he would have? He absolutely would have.
Didn't.
But he get away with it.
Socked him in the mouth.
I mean, the episode where Q turned into a human because he was being punished by the rest of the Continuum, he put him in the brig first thing.
Yeah.
It was not nice
to feel good. That had to feel good.
I loved all those episodes, man. There was one Star Trek guy who did a video on how out of character Picard becomes when Q's around. He forgets all of who he is. Like everybody does, because they're just so freaked out by the amount of power he has. Like they just turn into complete little chicken heads running around with their heads cut off.
Yep. And this is a good time to bring up too that for those of you who don't know, because we've not announced it, but we kind of talked about it. The Final Frontier, we're going to start filming again in September. I don't know when we're going to release it, but we're going to start filming again in September. And Sosa will be gracing us with his presence when we look at the first episode of the original series, season 2, Amok Time.
Yeah,
red shirt and all. It will be. That's a great episode. That's a really fun.
Oh yeah.
Episode.
I don't have the red shirt, but if y'all give me one.
Oh no, it's on its way, along with your Dragon Ball candle. It's in the process of being sent.
I appreciate it. I'm gonna promo y'all's merchandise on some of my stuff. So
sweet.
Well, go. I want to finish up one topic though, because we've been talking about a lot of things, and it's been great. Sorry.
Bless
Uh,
bless you again.
Are you able to grasp the reasoning that you do need people like Andrew Wilson, and you also need people who are more mellow like Jordan Peterson and you?
Oh,
And
absolutely.
different, like both are needed for all the fronts of the battle.
Yeah. Okay, I'm thinking. I'm not disagreeing. I'm thinking.
Well, this is the thing. I'm going to tell Ben Shapiro this.
Yes.
Like,
Yes.
I'm
You
going
are-
to tell him this. The whole point in the red pill and that whole movement that Ben Shapiro and all these old school conservatives do nothing but slander and refuse to debate. It's a good philosophy in general. The whole point is that you attract people in you show them what is good about it and the things that you can achieve and being strong and all that stuff. And then once they're here in the camp, then you have all these Ben Shapiro types teach them the correct morality. That's the whole point of it.
Well, I think the problem is there are some people that are, which the red pill, it's not dead, but compared to what it once was, it's effectively dead by comparison.
I don't know if I agree with that, man.
Well,
Like
I mean,
we're
just in mainstream consumption.
I don't know, man. Like I still think it's very popular. I think it's part of our culture now.
I'm just talking about by comparison.
It was it bigger, sure, but
Yeah,
I think
that's what I'm.
I think we're not as astounded by the growth of it because it's become part of us now. So
And
I think that's still a bigger W.
Fair enough. But here, my point being is that I don't disagree with what you're saying. I think the problem, though, is that there are people within the red pill that would disagree with what you just said and would say, like, well, don't listen to. I'm not saying you have to listen to Ben Shapiro, but they'd be like, well, don't listen to Ben Shapiro. He's a pussy. They don't understand the need to temper a strong message like that once, because I understand and I agree with what you're saying. And the wider point I was going to make is like, yes, people like Andrew Wilson are essential because he attracts people into a new idea that may not resonate with a Ben Shapiro, who may not resonate with a Jordan Peterson. The problem is that any ideology on either side that's too extreme creates extremists.
True.
But to your point, if there are multiple points of view in a space to mitigate that, then that's fine. The problem is when there aren't enough counter. And the
That's
problem
why
with
I just
extreme.
hate this infighting. I hate it so much. I look at I'm like Darth Bane looking at the rest of the Sith Order. Like all y'all do is infight, and it's no wonder y'all haven't won anything because y'all can't stop bickering amongst yourselves. Like that's literally how we handle things. I can't freaking stand it.
That's the criticism I always levy against the libertarians. Is it's like you guys are still arguing amongst each other about whether or not we need roads.
You know, the Democrats argue the same thing, and I don't think how they could ever possibly think that, but they think the same thing about us, is that they think that they're the ones who are too soft. I'm just like, no. But they would say all the same things about us. But yeah, and the argument is that they will be led astray or led off to do bad things that they shouldn't do by these people. I understand that argument, but where they are without them is off onto the crazy left, is out in the ether with a pointless life, taking psychiatric and psychotropic drugs and getting addicted and not taking care of their responsibility. And that whole pagan life, not following God at all, that's where they will end up without these other people who at least have some good qualities and can attract them to the right side, and they can finish, and then Ben Shapiro and Matt Walsh and everybody else can finish wheeling them in once they get there.
Well, yeah, and the other reason that you need multiple people addressing the message in different ways is because different people need different things. Like for example, when I first got, which I'm not, I have to word this carefully. When I was first introduced to the red pill movement, it did resonate with me, but I was in a very different place, right? Now, and I would say the movement as a whole, the diagnosis is spot on. It's certain prescriptions.
I've heard that argument. Yeah. I'm also willing to bet you weren't married then, were you?
Not when I discovered it. No, I had been
exactly. That makes a difference.
Oh no, 100%. And there are people in the red pill space that say this. Like this is not a controversial take. And there are
And
stages
I
you
don't
go.
mean to interrupt, but I'm gonna put a big prop on Jake right here. Um, I don't remember your name, and I will learn it at some point. We will eventually meet. But Jake's wife, you seem like a lovely girl from what I've seen. But the fact that Jake actually feels this way about the red pill is only a sign that you treat him well and that he loves you to death, because that's why it triggers him in the first place. So
I
it's a
will.
compliment to you.
Oh no, I will tell you. And it's indirectly through her that parts of I don't even want to say the red pill argument. There are things that certain people in the red pill space say that I now have life experience saying that it's not universally true. I understand it's the generalization thing
Yeah,
back
yeah.
again.
You don't
Well,
want your wonderful wife to be caught up in the all women is bad thing.
oh,
You
she
know, I
never.
get it.
Well, and the thing is, I think she would agree with the sentiment as a whole. But here, and this goes back to like what you were saying about the family unit. Is this is funny because that whole thing is subject to gradation. When it comes to us in our everyday lives, she really does not enjoy making decisions. It's not something that
Yeah,
she likes to do. She does not like to do it. With big decision, and she hasn't come out and said it directly, but she said it in different ways. For big decisions, like she obviously wants to be part of the discussion, but ultimately she trusts that I have the family's best interest, which I do. Like, and
you
that's
feel
when that
blessed.
well,
I know
and
you do.
that's when that relationship really works. But as you were saying, that requires the man to be a good man. And the problem with certain people that get into the red pill space is they get too hung up on some of the peripheral stuff and they become bad people.
Mhm.
They prioritize the wrong things. Now there's a time and place for all of it.
Yeah, and you're completely correct. The I'm not even saying you're wrong. I'm just saying, but here is still the truth about the issue. We must keep a vigilant eye on those things, which is again what the Matt Walshes and the Ben Shapiros are for.
Mhm.
We must also guard against that as individuals. But we are still way better off with a bunch of Andrew Tates than a whole bunch of religionless, godless communities. Like so,
The only problem with an Andrew Tate, and this is dude, I still watch Tate Confidential because that shit is entertaining as hell.
okay,
Like it's good. The only problem, and it's not with Andrew Tate, it's how people consume Andrew Tate. If you only consume Tate, and especially when you can't understand the difference between hyperbole and actual, like, for lack of a better word, sermon, like because Tate by his own admission is someone who uses hyperbole for comedic effect and for emphasis, right? But that's the problem with anything, even leftist ideologies. If you only listen to one person, you will not be a you will not be a complete person.
mhm.
Because you have to temper your Tate with other things because every situation is different. This goes into the whole like you can't always ignore the exceptions. Sometimes you
Yeah,
can, sometimes you have to, but
yeah, and this is it's such a broad topic or a broad statement that it kind of seems like a cop out. But this is the whole point in raising your children with two parents in the household, doing it the biblical way, the way God says, and then you'll have kids smart enough to be able to know better than that type of issue.
that's the constant push and pull, right? Because as I've said, I don't want anybody to be deplatformed because I think no, not all ideas are good ideas, but everyone has a right to say their ideas. But the reverse side of that is if you're going to present your ideas, then you are consenting to be criticized. Now,
And I
if you're
know you're going to disagree with this one. I know you are. Andrew Wilson talks about this, and you and I will talk about it. And I think you're going to agree with me mostly, but you're just going to be like, is force doctrine. Um, yeah,
no, and
I know.
I can explain to you why I don't think that's a good idea.
Sure,
Because
no, no. Let me just explain what I want to explain, though.
go for it.
Uh, you're already familiar with force doctrine, so that's good. So I can summarize my argument really quickly then. The first thing you have to do is it's not the first thing, but it's an essential thing, and none of the morality will mean anything if you do not have the force to back it up or the will to back it up. You have to make men more willing to stand up and take control, or else it's never going to get better, no matter how moral you are. So Tate kind of has to come first or at the same time. Or like I said, Tate brings him in, and then you help him along the way, you know?
Mm-hmm.
He's necessary. He's not just like an influencer. He's necessary, or else we'll never get anywhere.
Well, yeah, no, I don't disagree with that. I thought you were going a different way with force doctrine.
Well, why he's a force for good above him being bad and his influence and sleeping with all these girls and having kids that he doesn't live with. I understand there's a lot of negativity that comes with that, but why he's still the right, if they truly want to succeed, has no business trying to kick him out of the club.
No, but that speaks to what I've been talking about this whole time. Is nobody is perfect, but that doesn't mean that they have ideas that aren't worth listening to. Like nobody's an expert in everything. Like Tate, this is just an example. I'm coming out with that thin air. Tate's message may very well be perfect for, like you said, an introduction into identifying what's wrong with the world, but that doesn't mean his prescription is right. But it gets the conversation going, right?
Right, and that's the most essential part of it. We have to at least get it going so that the rest of us can do it right, even if he's not, and we can teach other people to do it the right way.
Well, and this is another hypothetical example. I've literally met nobody that this happened to, but I could see it happening. Let's say you've got a young man. Let's say he's 18, 19 years old. He's doesn't have particularly good luck in dating. His job kind of sucks. He's kind of feeling lost. He comes across Tate's message, and it's like, you know what? I am a lazy piece of shit. You know, I need to get my act together. And let's say he does. Now, he might have some of the more negative aspects when it comes to views on women, for example. But because he made those changes in his life, he may now be in situations where he interacts with women more, and he realizes, well, this isn't really working. Maybe this is a little harsh. Or he might double down. I mean, it might work for him, but either way, he's able to follow that path to a point where it stops working, and then he can pivot. That can happen in any different ways, right? That's how it should happen.
That's kind of essentially what happened to me. I've always called myself a mini Tate. Like that's essentially what happened to me. Yeah.
The point is, though, you follow philosophy until it diverts, and then, well, at least someone who wants to be well-rounded and well-read and, you know, has an open mind. Not so open that your brain falls out, but open enough to let in other things. The danger comes when you don't let in new ideas, and when the philosophy starts to not work, you double down. Like, because doubling down on something that doesn't work is just patently stupid.
Yeah.
And not
you're
for nothing,
correct. Again, that's just.
Yeah. Well, not for nothing. I did
you
see a
live
video.
a godly life to make sure that doesn't happen.
Yeah. Actually, I wonder. I'm hoping you can give me context for this because I've never been able to explain this.
Sure.
Tate did a video. I forget what year. It's fairly within the last couple of years, fairly recent, where he's basically talking about it's better to sleep with a trans woman than an ugly.
I don't know that context. It wouldn't surprise me if he said it.
I want to believe that it was a joke, but having watched the entire video, I'm like, I don't think he's joking. And I really
it wouldn't surprise. Like, it wouldn't surprise me if he was like leaned a little bit that way or something. I've seen sufficient evidence, you know, that it's suspicious. Like, but
Bottom Tate is not Andrew Tabor.
Like, huh?
I said, Bottom Tate is not the same person, right?
Yes. But I concede it. Just that's why you're supposed to be check up on each other as a community, and follow biblical standards, and make sure that you don't lead people astray by doing wrong things yourself, or not setting a bad example, not discouraging anyone else.
I think that video was actually made shortly before his reversion.
Okay, it's a risk, but we still the benefits still vastly outweigh the cons.
Oh, sure. No, my message with everything, though, with any ideology is never 100%. No one is perfect. No one is
Oh
flawless.
yeah. So
Because,
you just want us to make sure that we're on guard for Andrew Tate's vices?
well, no, I actually want, because it was so out of left field. I'm like, this has to be a joke, but I can't, like, there's nothing I can point to say, like, he's obviously kidding. Because I'm like,
I don't know. I'll look that up after
yeah.
we're done here.
Well, because I saw it as like a short, right? And I'm like, oh, this is missing and it was missing context. But then I watched the whole thing, and I was like, I can't explain this.
Um, I don't know.
I don't. I say I'm still in the I don't know camp. But like, and the case that I've made to reinforce that point is like, I like the vast majority of what Jordan Peterson says. However, I I call on the bit of hypocrisy when he talks about, as a clinical psychologist, the benefits of getting one's life together to make your life better, and then he had a problem with what was a psycho he had a drug problem that he needed to go to rehab to get weaned off of.
Uh-huh.
I forget what the drug was, but it had something to do with his
Yeah,
depression.
I remember.
Yeah, and I was just kind of like, that kind of goes against. Now, to be fair, and I think he's come out and said this, is like, well, yeah, before it happened to me, I really didn't have an idea of what that was like. So you're allowed to change your mind with new evidence, right? But that criticism still exists.
Yeah.
So,
You just don't want us to forget the criticism.
right, precisely. And I just don't want, like, nobody's free of criticism, because we're all gonna fuck up at some point, and we're gonna be wrong, and we're gonna say things that maybe we didn't mean to say, or it's like, I probably should have
Well, for
said
you
that a
to
different
say
way.
that you disagree with me on Tate, to go that far as to say you disagree with me or Andrew Wilson, would seem to indicate that we're that all of us as a group are not already doing that. I think most of us are doing that. The vast majority. I think that's why we're all starting to swing towards religion in the first place. I think we're all headed in the right direction.
I agree, but the way certain people talk does not indicate that. Because I agree with you. I don't think it's possible to be that sort of beholden to a single ideology. But how it's presented can sometimes seem that way. Like, there are people that
Yeah.
to sling shit at some of the lefties. Like, there are people that will die on a hill that Joe Biden was a good president. When it's like,
Oh yeah.
there are enough liberals that just say that is just demonstrably not true. Like, not to say that they wouldn't vote for him over Donald Trump, but to say that he was a fantastic president is
Yeah.
just, that's, come on.
I think that I still think he does so much more positive than good, that for you to say you disagree with me on him, I'm like, I think you're making a mistake by like pushing back against him so hard.
Who's that, Wilson?
Wilson, Tate, anybody that you don't, these manosphere people you don't like.
Oh no, I like. Okay, let me clarify. The only reason I don't like Andrew Wilson is because I think he makes bad arguments. But in defense of your standpoint, I've realistically not watched enough of him. I'm basing this off of what I've seen, and you clarified one of them already. So that's one criticism gone, because you clarified. I just can't get over the jar, man. The jar thing just. I'm sorry, man. If you're constantly making the argument that women need men to do something, you better be able to do the thing.
This is true. I completely agree with you on that point. Men need to be leaders, and they need to be the men who are capable of being leaders. Like, that is their job. Yeah.
Well,
Not all on women.
Well, and when it comes to Tate, I actually like Tate. I've defended Tate over the years because, like, I still don't think the allegations are true, but this is a logical
Okay.
thing, because I think if they were, if they had something, they would have had him by now. If they had something substantial. Now, do I think he's been a piece of shit to some people? Yeah, but do I think people are reading into that a little too much? Yeah.
See, you really don't disagree with me that much.
No, not on Tate, not on Tate. Now, there are certain parts that it's
So
more. Oh, go ahead.
I was just saying, okay, so the Andrew Wilson bit, yeah, I'll send you some good videos.
Yeah, from what I've seen, I don't like actually with both of them, it's less about. I don't know that I haven't seen enough of Andrew Wilson to really come to a conclusion on his
You know what?
arguments.
I have the perfect video that's already on my channel. I'm not sure if you commented on it, but the one where he debated Lauren Chen,
No, but I'm aware. I know what you're talking about.
like
Yeah.
you'll really see him like really narrow down what Christianity is all about. Like I
Gotcha.
like it.
Yeah. Well, the point I was making though is a lot of times with the people that I quote unquote don't like, it's less about what they're actually arguing and more about how they're arguing it.
Yeah, and see, the people like me, the people who like Tate and everything like that, and kind of are emblematic of the same vibe and culture and stuff. Like we're just sick of that. There is way too much time spent on how something is said and not what's being said. It needs
But
to be the opposite.
yeah. Well, and I think the difference between, because I understand the crowd you're talking about, I think the difference between them and me though is the fact that I'm okay admitting that that is just simply how that's not how I prefer to receive a message, but that's a me thing. I'm not suggesting that they need, because here's the thing, the magic is lost if they soften the message. I get that.
Well, I don't know. It just seems to me, just different videos I've seen on your channel, that you seem to be overly harsh of these people.
Okay, can you point to a specific one? I'm not trying to gotcha, but
Like Trump is a perfect example.
okay, on what issue? Because the only reason is this is kind of hard
The,
to.
the battle that he resembles and the war that he is fighting on behalf of America and us and everything like that, and the good that he does do, is so vastly superior to all the bad things that y'all legitly have to say. And Epstein might be something that would get him close to not being that, but even then, like when you factor in all that stuff, like to be as critical as not you, but like, some people like on the libertarian side are, and to go with the people that they go with, which I'm sure you'll agree with me on that too, like who they elected, I'm sure you wouldn't have liked them either. But you're doing a disservice to the moral path and doing things the right way by being so opposed to them. Like
That's
it
just broad.
slows down our progress in the right direction.
Well, to be fair, I've been outspoken on this. I like gridlock because I'm more concerned with the right decision being made rather than expeditiously. But I guess in
Yeah,
terms of Trump, I can, because I'm all over the place with Trump because sometimes I'm very much praising him. I still think it was a crime that he didn't receive the Nobel Peace Prize for the Abraham
yeah.
Accords. You know,
And
and
see,
I'm
here's just the
go for it.
You know what? Let me interrupt you for a second.
Go
And
for
you
it. Go
see,
for it.
here's the cop out argument that's true, but it doesn't really help you feel better about the situation. Is that all these temperaments are both necessary and they're supposed to argue with each other, but like you're not wrong, but
And that's the frustrating part.
yeah, like, but people like me, you're more like Jordan Peterson. I'm more like Tate. Like
Yeah,
that's just how we're built, and both are
100%.
necessary for the society. And I guess I'm just essentially what my end message is: just come together for the love of God. Stop. Like I understand that you should be able to make art videos criticizing, people on your side and everything like that. Yeah, but we nitpick way too much. I'm tired of being Sith Lords. Like we need to stop that ish.
Well, my only contention would be I wouldn't view that as nitpicking, and I would say the benefit of having two different people, like you and I as, use you and me as the examples, is if you and I come together and agree on something, then I'm pretty sure it's legit.
Yeah, yeah.
So that would be the positive, I would say, of having differing perspectives. And I mean, fuck, we could do an entire video of, me explaining my views on particular Trumpisms. But like I would need a specific example and then I can comment on it. But one that I will share, and this is very frustrating for me, is I very much agree with what well, not everything, but the majority of what Trump has done with the border. I actually agree with that. My issues are what he's done with immigration policy. And it's not just Trump, I want to be clear. It's our immigration system and laws as a whole. That's not just Trump. That goes back damn near 100 years. It's a
I
system
agree.
that's totally fucked and needs to completely be reworked. And I think there's a lot of compromises that could be achieved that would make people on the left and the right happy ultimately. But nobody's
Nah,
doing it. Nobody's doing it.
but see, that's the problem. This is a very negative way to put things, but it's true. So I'm sorry, but people who are there are good people who are leftists, but the left as a whole is not is just not good. It won't lead to the right path. Like it leads away from God, leads away from religion. So I'm sorry, it just there can't be compromise there. Like there you have to be that harsh in order to be able to actually make the system that we want work. It's like Thor, what Odin said to Thor in the first Marvel movie about he can't be a good leader and a good person at the same time. That's actually the truth. That's how it is. That
Well,
really is how it is.
I think Thor demonstrates the exact opposite of that, though, as the movies progress.
Yeah, but he's still not ruling the entire universe.
Sure, but I think, well, okay, and again, there's a fundamental difference of philosophy there because I don't think that single person rule is good inherently. I think that's bad
Well, no, no,
inherently.
no. I'm not arguing for that. But what I am arguing for is that there has to be a certain respect for the people like Tate, for the people like me, the enforcers. There has to be like we we do the things that are seem horrible to everybody to keep the rest of our family safe. That's
Sure,
kind of the same
sure,
thing that happened in Israel right now. It's kind of the
sure,
same concept.
sure, but the only thing I would say to that is blind admiration leads to not admiration. What's the blind exaltation leads to corruption.
Which we already
Yeah,
went over, and
is that we're going back and forth making the exact same points.
you
So,
just no. Essentially, what it is you just want to make sure we're careful. You know, I get
I
it.
mean,
I
fair
get
enough,
it.
fair enough. Yeah, I'm very much a moderate, so I like to
I get
tiptoe.
it.
I like to
I get
tiptoe.
it.
You
I'm
like to
not that
sprint.
way. That mentality drives me nuts. I'm like, no, this is right. Do it. Boom. That's it.
Yeah, and I'm the guy who's in the background being like, well, hang on.
Careful. Careful.
If you crash through that wall,
Yeah,
shit might fall on people.
I
And
get.
you need both. You absolutely need
Yeah.
both because people like me, I'll admit it, people like me, we don't move fast enough sometimes. I get that's why when you're in a that's why the president is commander in chief of the armed forces in a time of war. That is
Right.
why they made it that way because you don't have time if you're in war, you don't have time to think about collateral damage all the time. You got to make decisions. People like me are really good for peacetime when you want everybody to be harmonious and sing kumbaya. And I get it. That's very, I want to say idealistic, but that doesn't seem like the right word. It's a dreamer. It's very much a dreamer thing. The
I
difference
get it.
between,
It's just funny
and this, yeah,
how we both agree, but like because these differences must exist, it's still frustrating to the other side. You're like,
well, but this is the type of relationship that I would say this is kind of a good representation. I'm going to insert us in as characters. If you're a king, you want someone like me as an advisor,
right, yeah, yeah,
someone that you trust to be at your side and be like, hey, man, I get what you're trying to do, but here's things that might happen or might be perceived as happen if you do it this way. Maybe you dial it back a smidge.
right. And see, my argument is that we've dialed it back smidges way too much, and we
And,
need dramatic action.
and here's the frustrating part for me is because I don't think you're wrong. But I'm still concerned with some of the collateral damage that is done by that arguably necessary sprint in that direction.
Yeah,
And that's why I gave shit to the Biden administration because of immigration again. I blame the Biden administration as much, if not more, than the Trump administration for what's happening with immigration policy in the country today. Because I
Yeah.
understand that. Because they let it get so bad for so long that now they're pretty well justified in doing what they're doing, even though I don't like it. I don't think it's fair and I think it's morally wrong because it's also not universal. Because there are some people in this country who could absolutely be kicked out immediately. And that's the
Yeah.
frustrating thing. Like to
Yeah.
disagree with that, and the left today, like New York is getting in trouble because they're openly protecting people that should absolutely be deported. My only
You know what?
disagreement. Oh, go
Yeah,
for it.
yeah. I'm gonna tell you something, bro. And this is also gonna seem like one of those, fatherly cop outs, but I'm telling you, it's true. You don't have any kids, right?
No.
Right. All right. But you
And
are
I admit,
married.
no, I'm not married. I'm actually getting married next weekend, but close enough.
Okay, yeah, that's close
Yeah,
enough.
close enough.
I didn't actually know that it was coming up that soon. You didn't let me get you a gift or nothing. If you have one of
We're
those Amazon, send it to
well,
me.
we're not doing gifts. We're
Okay, I'll send you something regardless.
oh,
Anyways, um, got off kind of off track.
you were talking
Sorry.
about parent. You were talking about parent. And before you get into that point, though, I will also admit that I understand my perspective is going to change
Yeah,
when I have
bro, have a
children.
kid, man.
Yeah.
Then I promise you'll see God.
Oh, I
I
don't I
promise.
don't I don't not believe you.
Like yeah, I'm telling you. But um, that'll change your whole perspective on it. Yeah, but that's why you have to do it the biblical way. That's why you have to do it the godly way. We are not capable of making it ourselves. We cannot fix this system. Like, no matter how well we debate between ourselves, we're imperfect and we cannot do it on our own. The human species will never be capable, no matter how far we progress or think we progress. Because while we live longer and have definitely gotten better at technology and stuff, and major improvements to our lives have come, we're not, at our base instincts, we're not that different. We really aren't. We're the same. Like, there's not going to be any progression to where we eventually make it to being perfect and we don't need God anymore. It's not going to happen. You're going to have to revert to God at some point or cease to exist. That's the only way it is. That's the only solution. Like, it can't be any other way.
It's really hard to debate that point because it's so broad. And not that I disagree. It's
We
just
we can't do it on our own.
I can agree with that. Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, I think that's demonstrably true because taking that to an
I
absurd.
understand resenting. You said this earlier, and if I don't mean to make it sound bad, but it, I understand the temptation to be resentful over there not being any other way and it basically feeling like slavery. I get that. But
Well, that's not really what I said, but I get your point. But yeah, that's not
yeah,
really.
yeah, I'm not trying to paint what you said badly at all. I'm just
And I'll be the
but
first to
you
admit
know
it's
what? That's
very
the reality,
hubristic.
and we still have so much to be thankful for in this reality. We were created to have a good time. We were created to multiply ourselves and bring happiness to God by us being happy. That's literally why we
Right.
were created. If we head that way, we will eventually make it to that point where everything will be fine. And being resentful over that, over there not being any other way, it's not worth it. It's not worth it.
No, I
It won't.
agree. I agree with what you're saying. The only thing is that's not really what I was, or at least that's not what I intended to say. But I get your point. I understand what you're saying.
Yeah. Enjoy life and enjoy heading towards the life that will be forever eternal and perfect. Instead, that is a far better option to promote to people than to, oh, well, I don't really like, that this, there's no other choice. No, wrong answer.
I'm probably just a little bit overly concerned with the suffering of others.
You're more compassionate, you know?
Takes different strokes, folks.
Can I mildly mess with you and insult you ever so slightly?
Always.
Okay, just because I actually do mean this, but I don't mean it to be insulting in any way, shape, or form. I'm more just trying to. I'm not trying to. I'm more just bragging about myself, you know, than I am trying to insult anybody. But you know, the more compassionate is more womanly and everything. And I'm not saying that you're not a man or not a manly man or anything like that, but I'm definitely way more eccentric than you. So but that's why we were put in the leadership positions to do these kind of things. And y'all are, that's the whole problem with the system today, is that y'all are supposed to be the advisors and we're supposed to be the leaders, and it's inverted right now and everything is going to crap because of it.
I don't necessarily disagree with that. I truly don't. Because there are a lot of people that are in leadership positions where it's like, I
That's
I
why
don't
I
think this
sincerely
position.
believe someone like Thomas Massey couldn't run the country.
Oh no, well, and the other reason is Thomas Massey is too extreme to be in that high of a leadership position.
Right.
I
Yeah.
don't disagree with the extreme position he has necessarily, but it is too extreme to be the central authority figure. There's a certain
Yeah.
degree of moderation that someone at that high of a position has to have,
And that's why Trump is the right choice and not someone like Thomas Massey.
and I don't disagree with that.
Yeah. So
Thomas Massey is like a me who's
come
shouting
around
from.
to me, at some point. But and I promise, I would like it if you became a father one day. But I'd be willing to bet that within the next 10 years, you'll just be like, I found God, bro, and you were 100% right. Let's do this.
Oh no, probably, but to turn it against you, is your types, the leaders. You're the first ones to get beheaded when the revolution happens.
I'll die happily.
Well, but that's what I'm saying. But that's not a dig. That's a thing, and there are many times where people take on that
You're
role.
right.
Well, because I mean, look at the founding fathers. They knew that if they lost, their heads were the first ones that were going to roll,
Yeah.
and they knew that.
But I mean, I've already kind of made my grave, so to speak. I for certain got CTE, at least somewhat living on older. So hopefully I can still, recover all the damage and stuff and not suffer from it too much, or maybe not at all. Maybe I'll get lucky. But yeah, there's no going back for me.
Well, and I think there's some value in eventually understanding, because I'm not saying I'm not a leader. It depends on the situation, because I have a leadership role in the company, but different types of leadership, I just know I don't have the temperament for. I second guess myself too much to be like, I know I could never be a general. It's not going to happen. I am too concerned with other things. But I think there's a lot of people who would be a lot happier in life if they thought critically about themselves like that, instead of just being like, yeah, I'm going to be the leader, when you're really not cut out for it. Not you, the royal you.
Yeah, I get you.
Yeah.
And that I already said this argument once, so I'll just say it and not really expand on it. But that goes back to the previous argument I made. I'm like, okay, well, if you agree with that, the roles between us, you're being a little too harsh. So
That's my job.
I know, but yeah, there is a line,
No, I don't think I'm all that harsh. I just think that.
No, not usually, but every once in a while I see you come out with these,
Oh yeah,
some Trump
sometimes.
immigration thing, and I'm like, bro, no, come on now.
Can you point? I'm not trying to put you on the spot, but can you point to one?
Um, no, but I remember
I'm just
watching your
curious.
videos and commenting on your live streams and stuff and it's just our general disagreements. It's all in good good faith and fun. But I mean, I have one. I can't believe that he slowed down on immigration, because of the restaurants. I hate that.
Well, I
But
hate that too, but for completely different reasons, because I think it's hypocritical as fuck.
it is hypocritical, and it also takes away the jobs from the Americans who deserve those higher wages.
Well, the caveat, I would maybe not so much with the restaurants, but a lot of those jobs the average American is not interested in.
There are a lot of spoiled kids out there, but I honestly don't believe
Yeah.
that there's so many America has become that lazy. I don't think we've gotten that far yet.
Oh,
I think they just want to get paid what they deserve.
I
Like
vehemently disagree.
I don't blame people not wanting to go work at Subway for $9 an hour or $11. I don't blame them. Like I kind of get it.
Yeah. I mean that's a really complicated other can of worms, honestly, because there's a lot
Yeah.
there's a
We
lot
can do
that
that
goes
one.
into that. Yeah, I was gonna say that's a totally different, like that's hours of back and forth, back and forth. Because but to your point and sort of a nod of agreement is, yeah, that was obviously done to keep wages lower.
Yeah.
That's the only reason to get my concern of it is totally different, but it's the same result, right?
Yeah.
Is the fact that like that was obviously done to keep wages low. Like, and that's shitty. That's a horrible. And I believe that's exploitation of people in
Yeah.
in both camps. It's exploitation of the immigrants who don't have really other options, and it's exploitation of the American worker because they're being told, well, we don't want to pay you what
Yeah.
is a fair wage, right? So, I mean, you're right
So
on both
mostly just
counts.
joking with you now. I'm just poking a little fun at you, but this is a perfect example of why people like me and Trump and Tate and everything are needed on the immigration front, because yes, it was ruined by Biden, but you know what? Who's going to make them leave? No, you need us. So when we do something, don't be so critical on us, because this is the kind of stuff that has to be done.
Well, no, my criticism of that would be that the way our laws work in this country is they're not supposed to be retroactive. So, barring like criminal offenses, which are already applicable under the law. So my criticisms of a lot of this stuff when it comes to Trump are specifically things like parole programs and things like TPS and people who were legally admitted into the country on some type of parole program that were then canceled under the Trump administration. That's the problem I have. Because like I say I agree with most of what was done on the border. The one thing that I really don't agree with on the border was the cancellation of the CBP1 app, because people had existing immigration appointments and then they just got rid of it. I think that's fucking unfair, and it's probably not illegal, but it should be, because up to the point where someone incidentally won an election, the people that were using that app were doing things the legal way, and then it got pulled out from under them. And I think that's horribly shitty. And I also think that kind of spits in the face of the idea that they're just enforcing the law, because as far as what Trump has done in a lot of the Trump administration has done in a lot of instances, it's not about doing it legally. It's about getting people out that don't look like us. Because things like the cancellation of TPS, for example, that was done legally under the law. Now, granted, they're still being sued for that, but theoretically, which it's a shit law to begin with, but under the law, it was extended and then they rescinded it. And that put, like, just from Venezuela alone, that's like 650,000 people that are now fucked, and they were doing something legally. Temporary, yes, but legal. That's the issues I have. Like, I'm not
I get it,
advocating.
bro, but you want to know what the sad reality of it is? Well, dang, that sucks. I'm sorry.
Well, particularly like, well, for example, not just Venezuela, but like they took away TPS for Afghanistan, dude. Like, that's fucked up. You gotta admit that's fucked up. Because these people, if they're sent back to Afghanistan, they are going to die. They will be killed.
Yes, I agree. But like,
And here's the thing, I would have less of a problem with it if it wasn't the United States government that created that program and enrolled them in that program. That's the fucked up part.
okay, yeah, it wasn't their fault. The kid that the mom broke into the Disneyland with, it wasn't the kid's fault that they broke in, but that doesn't mean the kid gets to stay there.
Well,
I'm
no,
sure you've heard that argument before.
Well, no, but that's a separate issue because in order for it's a little nitpicky, but in order to qualify for TPS, you have to pass a background check. You can't have a criminal history. You have to pay a fee. You get a work permit, and it is temporary. The example that you're citing, I would probably point to as, yeah, you're probably right. I don't know that story, so I don't know. I don't know what happened there, but I would point to that and say I'll point to one that we can agree on, like the Venezuelan gang members that were fucking beating people up in New York City. Yeah, fucking send them back. I have zero issue with that. It's too big of a blanket,
There
is what
are
I'm saying.
some cases that do get granted asylum. I mean,
Well,
there
sure, and
are.
that's yeah,
Uh,
but none of those people are violent criminal offenders because that disqualifies them from getting their asylum case.
yeah, just there is the reality that we've had enough people. Like, we don't want them more.
Well, I don't know about that. Social Security would beg to disagree, but
Well, that's because the social security system is all
and
corrupt, and
and
yeah,
I agree with that. But I guess here's my point is like, and you,
if there's
I
something
just
that we can agree on, it's government systems being absolutely corrupt.
yeah. But this is the point I was going back to earlier. And you may be right. There may be too many people here, but the point that I will still make is that those people were let in under the law when they were let in.
But they weren't really,
Yes, they
you
if they
know.
were no, well, okay, that's too big of a blanket statement. People that were, say, apprehended by Border Patrol, for example, and were released into the catch and release program. I agree. That was a shitty program. It should not have been done, but it was. They were told that they could enter.
Uh, okay, I just have to say it like this then. I'm like, okay, too bad, so sad. We don't have room. Like,
Well, we do
sorry.
though. I mean, we do. This is a very big country with a lot of
You
space.
want to know
But
something? And you probably don't disagree with me on this. I think that a lot of those people were dishonestly taking advantage of the system. I think they knew
oh,
what they were freaking doing,
probably.
and I
Yeah.
don't care if they leave.
No, I don't disagree with that. And to be fair, because you live in Texas, your perspective is way different from mine.
Yeah,
You're
like,
closer. You're closer to it. I get that.
my face is an example of the type of people that are like saturating our cities.
And fair enough, you know. But I just look at it as something that was legal yesterday and is now illegal today. I don't think that people who did it when it was legal should be punished for doing something that they did when it was legal.
It's not fair,
It's not.
and I
That's
think
yeah.
that I think the government is doing at least not the government. I think Trump is doing a good enough job making sure that everyone is made to deal with and being happy, and like, it's a sad reality. Yeah, it's just not fair sometimes. I can't even begin to tell you how many times I've been treated unfairly.
I mean that's fair enough. And but to kind of to benefit my point, I'm also one of those people that when they make THC legal nationwide, I think part of that should be that anyone who has been who is currently in prison for or has ever been in prison for a nonviolent drug offense involving THC should be either released and or have that expunged from their records.
I get what you mean, man, but you want to know the reality of the situation? It comes down to is that doing it your way leads to too many people, and there has to be a hard line that's drawn. We don't have time to do all this other extra stuff. Hard line, boo. That's just what it needs to be. It's just the reality of it.
Differing perspectives. But like I said, it's a debate, man.
What it is a balance of each other,
That's
You know.
fair. That is totally fair. And I guess my biggest pet peeve in all this is there is a lack of trying to compromise on certain things. And it's like, listen, I know it ain't going to be perfect, but it's like you're not even trying to make any sort of compromise. Not you,
Yeah,
the
yeah, I get it.
administration.
All right, I think that's good.
Yep.
We just gotta keep each other balanced.
I'm a big fan of balance. That's all I want. That's all I want is balance.
Yep. I realized how important it was later on in my fight career. I was like, wow, this is actually way more important than I thought it was.
It came around to Miyagi-Do, did you?
Little bit. I had to. Uh, did you like the way the last season ended up?
Bro, it was perfect. And as somebody who
I
didn't,
thought so too. Man,
I
it's so
didn't,
cheap, but it's so good. It's so old school.
as somebody who really, I didn't hate the first part of season 6, like the first half, but I wasn't like, I liked it, but I wasn't like, oh yeah, but man, those last few episodes with the full circle of the story, because if you haven't watched Cobra Kai yet, I don't want to spoil it for you, but you should, oh, it was perfect. It was absolutely perfect. Should not have ended any other way. It was perfect.
Yeah, I'm glad, man. Yeah, it was good stuff.
So good. Eric said the same thing because he watched it before me. He was like, "Bro, I'm not gonna say shit, but you're gonna love it."
Yep. Yep. I'm going to be watching Netflix now that I'm nice and high. I'm going to be enjoying myself watching some good shows like that.
Which, by the way, I'm going to text you those movies right now so I don't forget.
Thank you.
Silence. Now I don't. I think Silence is on. I don't think either of these is on Netflix, but you should be able to find them. There, should have them now. Well, once again, we'll wrap it up now. Thanks for coming on. Really appreciate it. Always fun to talk to you, even though we disagree. I hope
Yeah, well,
if anybody takes anything away from this video, I hope it's that it's okay to disagree. You can still be friends.
right. Yes. Like that's how it's supposed to work.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I'll come on a live stream whenever you want me to, buddy.
Yeah, yeah. No, we'll do the Chris Langan one soon. It's an awesome video.
Will do.
And
Awesome. Well,
I know I get annoying whenever I say this, but you said you were going to get the videos.
wait. Oh no, yeah. I get you in chunks.
Well, like once a year.
No, at least twice a year. But yeah, no, I promise you.
Oh,
I
so
promise.
much better. So much better.
I promise you, I'll be better about that. I will be because I do need to. I do
You're
need
good.
to.
I try not to be too annoying
No,
about
no,
it.
you're
Just
right. You're right though. You're right though. I do need to be better about that. Hopefully in the next couple of weeks, things in my life will simmer down. So
if anyone understands what simmering down needs to,
yeah,
how that needs to happen, I get it.
it's been a rough year or so. So, but we'll come out of it. We'll be fine.
Talk about that more later.
Yeah. Well, everybody, hopefully you enjoyed this episode of the Arete Podcast. But if you didn't, fuck you. Please like, share, and subscribe if you haven't already. And we will see you guys next month. And don't forget to check out our sponsors. We'll see you guys.